Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host for today, John DeLynn. It is November 21st. We're almost at Thanksgiving in 2022, and we are so excited to have back with us for a epic, long-form Mormon Stories Podcast interview to have back Chanel Achenbach. Hey, Chanel.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Good. For those who have been following us recently, we had Chanel on our LDS discussion series where we talked about race and Mormonism. She joined us for part one of that, was kind of a special guest, and people loved having her. We've had her back at least one or two other times.
Right.
As a panelist. She was recently on the discussion of gender with John Larson.
Yes.
And just so many people have been like, more Chanel, more Chanel. So today we are going to be hearing Chanel's Mormon story. What would make an African-American, a black teenage girl in San Antonio, Texas, of all places, what would lead her to want to join the Mormon Church? A little bit of her background. She serves a mission. She'll be talking about that. She, ended up pursuing Mormonism, trying to be a faithful, devout, happy Mormon. And then things got complicated. And so we're going to be hearing her full Mormon story. And joining me as riding shotgun, is my brilliant, amazing partner, Margie DeLynn. Hey, Margie.
Hey.
You are also much loved these days. People are loving having you as co-host. So.
Oh, that is so lovely to hear.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, I feel like the luckiest. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. So Chanel, maybe sometimes people like to begin stating their intention. So oftentimes, if you talk openly and honestly about Mormonism, immediately some believing Orthodox members will just assume you're trying to hurt the church or criticize the church or tear down the church. If you just wanted to state up front your intentions for why you're coming on Mormon Stories Podcast, what would those intentions be?
One of them is awareness. And surprisingly enough, another one is forgiveness and a pass for some members. And I think also I'm hoping and praying for change.
You want some change?
I want change. Yeah. It's necessary.
Okay. Well, let's jump in. Okay. So tell us about your upbringing and anything about your story that kind of you feel like primed you to be open to those Mormon, I'm assuming Mormon missionaries knocked on your door. Maybe it was friends in high school. I'm not sure, but tell us about your upbringing, anything that you think is important for your Mormon story.
Okay. So I'm from Texas, so that's a Bible Belt. So most everybody I knew was from some religious organization. So many. So it was kind of like Joseph Smith, where I was like, well, which one? Like I come from a very religious background. My father was Catholic. My mother was Baptist. My uncle was Methodist preacher. So I was around a lot of religion, and all my friends were either Catholic or Baptist, and they all had different youth programs. So I was familiar with religion and wanted to be part of religion. Well, the thing that really got me searching, and what happened was I had a car accident.
Okay, wait, can I jump back just a tiny bit?
Sure.
Okay, so were you raised by two parents, one parent?
Two parents, my mother, my father, so we went to church with my dad as a Catholic and went to church with my mom, Baptist.
So would you go to two churches on Sunday? Or?
It was like, so sometimes we went to my dad's church, sometimes we went to my mom's church.
Okay.
So and sometimes we went to my uncle's church because he was a preacher. It was my mother's uncle. He was a Methodist preacher, so we went to his church.
And then how many siblings did you have?
I have 3 sisters and a brother.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the second.
Second of 5?
Second of 4.
Second of 4. Mm-hmm. Okay. And were your parents from San Antonio as well? Or?
So yes, they grew up in San Antonio. Both of them did. But my father, I think his family is originally from Louisiana.
Okay. Okay. And so anything about just your family system kind of in your childhood years that's interesting? Did both parents work? Was it a single, was there a single income provider? Anything about just your family system?
I think that's important. My father worked. He worked for a phone company, Lucient, which is AT&T. He did the fiber optics, and he was really into sports. He had played football. He sang. My mother was a seamstress, a really amazing one. I'm talking, all you need to do is send her a picture, and she gets your measurements, and she made clothes. I mean, she was amazing. She made all my friends' prom dresses.
Really?
My prom dresses. Oh yeah, she was really good. She can make anything. She would upholster couches. I mean, she was good.
Wow.
Phenomenal.
Okay.
So she stayed home. She was home, and my mom was always home. And my father sometimes had to work out of town. So that's how I grew up.
I have a question. What was your experience with San Antonio? Like, did you love living there? What was your experience kind of as particularly like a child and a teen? Was it a place that you felt safe? Was it a place that felt like home? Was it a rough place for you for whatever reason? Like, how would you talk about that place?
I would talk about it as all of the above. It was all of the above, very festive, a lot of Latin influence. San Antonio is a Spanish name. A lot of Tex-Mex food, a lot of Tex-Mex speaking, a lot of diversity. We're near Lackland Air Force Base, so there's a lot of diversity. So we were around Asian people, Black people, Hispanic. I mean, just any demographic of people you were around. So it was diverse and it was fun. It's just a fun city. The only thing I didn't like about it and why I'm not there, it is hot. It's hot and humid, and I'm terrified of lizards and bugs, like big water bugs. I'm terrified, and I can't do it. I can't do the heat. And high crime. A lot of crime in San Antonio.
So was it kind of a typical suburban kind of neighborhood?
So when we grew up, it was more not. It was more lower middle class. So more around a lot of, I guess I could honestly say poverty, those things that come with that. Worried about if your lights are on, worried about if you're going to eat, worried about stuff like that.
What do you mean worrying about if your lights are on? So
in my community and how I grew up, it was a struggle to make sure your lights are going to be on. San Antonio is a very hot.
Oh, like power outages?
Like power outage,
okay.
Just worrying about that. And
because growing up in Houston, if the air conditioner goes out in the summer, you could have heat stroke and potentially have life-threatening kind of. Was it like that?
It was like that. And the thing about San Antonio, I don't think people realize, is that your electric bill, like for your AC, the power bill is so high because it's so hot. And I mean, Utah, it was not a big deal. But you had to choose between keeping your power on or paying your car or eating because it was just so high. So if you get your lights turned off, you just lit some candles. That's just what you did. You just got used to it. It wasn't a big deal.
So I'm curious too about your family culture. Like, if you were to describe your family growing up, what it felt like being in your home, and kind of what was important maybe to your family, or what was taught by your parents, like the values that they really felt like were important. Do you have many memories about that? What would you say?
So my dad had passed away in 2018. And I remember when I got up to say some words about my father, my oldest sister, Lydia, she just shook her head and she's like, she's just like him. My dad was very assertive, spoke his mind, said what he wanted to say. My mom is a peacemaker. She just wants everybody to get along. She wants everybody to be friendly. My father and I love people, but we were honest about what we didn't like. We were honest about setting boundaries, and that wasn't good for a lot of people. But I think that also made my dad very, very hard, very intolerant sometimes of different things, very religious person, intolerant of mistakes. Like, you didn't lie, you didn't steal, you didn't do those things, because my dad wasn't having it. My mom was a peacemaker. She didn't care. She's just like, oh, just, behave and just be polite. Just do what you're told. And my father was more strict. Like, it had to be clean to a T. Mm-hmm. I mean, if my family's watching this, my siblings will tell you, if you clean the bathroom, my father was the glove person, where he would go and touch the sink, and if there was residue, he'd make you clean the whole bathroom over, the whole thing. Wow. My mother was opposite. She was like, trash it, I don't care. And so we grew up with two different types of parenting, but my father was out of town a lot. So we when dad was gone, we kind of just let loose and did what we wanted. But when dad was around, it was very, 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 very strict.
So to kind of build on that, what kind of girl were you, like, growing up? Do you remember what you loved to do? How you felt, just anything about you during kind of, your kind of beginning grade school, even into middle school?
Funny. So, I didn't like getting in trouble. I don't like consequences. I didn't like getting in trouble. I knew spankings, grounding. I didn't like that. So I pretty much did what I was told to do. And I was terrified of God. Terrified. Like, in the South, if you do that, God's going to get you. God's going to strike you down. And so I was terrified of God. And so...
Did you pick that up at the churches you attended? The Catholic Church doesn't seem to be, or are they?
No, it was more my mom's side, the Baptist, my aunties, my uncles saying, you're going to get in trouble. God is going to strike you down for saying that. But as a girl, I pushed for answers all the time. I want to know. You need to explain to me. I don't understand this. I was always asking questions. I always told, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. But I had a potty mouth. I've always had a potty mouth. And that was hard for people because I said what I wanted, and which is interesting. But I always said what I wanted. If I felt it, I said it. And I asked questions. I pushed the envelope. I want to know, why did that happen? Why did he say that? Why did this happen? Why is this built? A lot of why.
Mm.
I love that. So curious, it sounds
very
like.
much.
And then also expressive. Like,
very much.
Really,
ardent, just...
Yeah.
Ridiculously so.
So one of the weird things about being raised Mormon, especially in Utah and Idaho, is you can reach adulthood having never really known a person of color, a black person. I know that sounds ridiculous, but you get it probably even here, right?
Yeah.
So we generally can be just very insensitive to what it's like to grow up black in America, right? And of course, you're just one experience, and you know about what it's like to grow up where you lived in San Antonio.
Correct.
as a woman of color. Is there anything you want to share about, like, how growing up as a black girl and woman in San Antonio would be different than growing up as a white girl or boy in Idaho or Utah?
Sure.
Anything worth sharing? I know you could talk for weeks about it, I'm sure.
Oh,
right?
I'm sure. It's, one of the things that I think people don't realize, or maybe they do realize, Black culture is very festive. Lots of parties, lots of dancing, lots of singing, lots of dance battles. I mean, that's what we did growing up, and lots of, joking, lots of, I'm a comedian, watch me. My parents would have parties, and that's what you did. And one of the things that is culturally, if you hear most Black people, there are two things that are iconic with Black culture is spades and dominoes. Those are huge. And if I meet a Black person, I will judge them for not knowing how to play spades. I'm like, excuse me? You don't know how to play spades? You don't know how to play dominoes, that's fine. But excuse me, you don't play spades. Oh my gosh, you're not Black. And it's huge. It's a big thing. And it's a fun thing because it's very competitive. Because with spades, you play with a partner. There's a person across from you that you're playing with, and there's the other two on that end that are playing. And that is a huge thing. Even at family get-togethers and reunions, that was a thing. Who's playing spades? Who's going to be whose partner? It's huge. It's a big deal. Dancing and spades and dominoes, huge.
Did you know that many Mormons grew up with a derivative of spades called rook. Have you ever heard of rook?
I've heard of rook, but I
So we were all taught that face cards were of the devil growing up. So in the 70s, 80s, 90s, face cards were bad. So like a believing, faithful Mormon home would not have face cards in the entire house. So there's this game called rook where there's 4 colors and then a rook card, which is like the ultimate trump. But you have to choose the color that's the trump for the hand, and you have a partner, and you try and get points, 5 point, 10 points, that sort of thing. I love rook and I love spades, so let's play spades sometime.
Oh, I'd love to see that. That's the funny thing is that was the thing that was hard for me. I was like, wait, we can't play cards? I can't use face cards. They were like, don't you dare pull those out. And I was like, oh, darn it, I want to play spades.
Culturally, that was significant.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
I love what you're describing too, because what I'm hearing on a level is this sense of gathering. You're gathering together and it's light. There's like a lightness, there's joy, there's dancing, there's singing, there's, playing games, as I would imagine, like a reprieve to maybe the heaviness of the world, like a tradition of sort of this as a people coming together and offering something different, maybe some hope to an experience. Would you say that? I
would definitely say that. And the thing about it is it's loud, but the loud is good. The loud is, I mean, there was a game that the kids knew what was going on. When this happened, spades was one thing, dominoes is another thing, but when they played Bidwiz, oh my gosh. That's when you heard the screaming, the swearing, the loudness, and all the kids would come running out of the room because if it was my Aunt May and my dad and my uncles and they were going at it, oh my gosh.
What was the game?
It's called Bidwiz. So it's kind of like a bidding game. Oh. And they would say these chants. They would swear, but you knew what was going on when you'd hear, who shit? And then you're like, oh my gosh, they're playing Bidwiz. You would run down there because they're going to go at it now. My father's like going to tear it up with the cards. He's going to smack him down. My aunt is going to sit there, and it's my mother's aunt. And so you're just watching these adults go at it, and you're just sitting there watching, oh my gosh, who's going to win this game? And they're slapping cards. They're standing up. They're screaming. They're pointing. They're cracking up. And it's loud. And it's fun. And it's gathering. And your cousins. After that's over, all the yelling's done, then you go back to playing with the kids. And you're dancing. You're singing. You're having talent shows. You're having dance contests, dance battles. That's just how you grew up. That's what we did. And we ate a lot. A lot of great food.
All right. Name 5 of your favorite types of food growing up.
It was definitely my mother's cornbread stuffing. Cornbread stuffing is great. She would make something from Texas that I cannot find here. I make it a lot. It's carne guisada, not carne asada. Carne guisada is Tex-Mex. It is basically stew meat with a little bit of Mexican spices and a little bit of heat and like a brown gravy. And you put it in a flour tortilla. And it's really good. It's one of my favorite things. My mother also makes Spanish rice, which I love hers. Another thing is mostly probably, they call them tostadas here, but we call them chalupas. Mm-hmm. It's a hard shell with beans and lettuce and tomato. I mean, that was huge. And I'm a barbecue snob. I will judge the hell out of you if you don't know how to cook brisket. If you don't know how to cook brisket, I'm going to judge you. I am a barbecue snob. Yes.
Do you have a favorite barbecue place now in Salt Lake or not?
Okay, there is one. It's called the Holy Grill.
Where's that?
It is actually by a Smith's in Pleasant Grove.
Oh.
Holy Grill. That is, I'm like, oh my gosh, finally, somebody knows how. And so.
What about R&R's? You been to R&R's?
R&R's is okay. I mean, it's fine.
It's okay.
But Holy Grill.
Holy Grill is good?
Brisket is a hard thing to smoke. Yeah. It's very hard. It's either too dry or undercooked. And I will snob you to death on it. Yeah. But they also know how to cook chicken thighs. Chicken thighs is another thing that's hard to smoke because either they're too greasy and undercooked or they're so dry and burnt. Holy Grill, they know how to cook food.
All right.
They know how to barbecue.
John,
we got to check that out.
Are you on it?
It is good. So good.
You're speaking his language.
Oh, yeah. I love barbecue. Yeah.
Ooh,
I grew up in Texas. So okay, this question is impossible to do justice, but obviously in the United States and in many places, there's a history of very significant, well, there's a history of slavery, history of heavy discrimination, civil rights and social justice around all sorts of different discriminated populations, but obviously African Americans. So is there anything you can share or want to share about how your family lived and experienced America with its past, with its history of past and present discrimination?
It's present kind of systems as well.
Yeah.
Like
Systemic racism. Systemic
that is
racism.
still alive and well.
Was that something that you thought about and talked about and lived with every day, that you tried to ignore? What was that like?
So my mother, like I said, is a peacemaker. She didn't really talk about it. She just said, be careful. That was mostly what she said.
Meaning what?
Just be aware of your surroundings. Don't cause trouble. Don't get any attention. My father, it was different for him. And I wonder if it was more different for him as a black man. He talked about it consistently because he was experiencing a lot of stuff at his job. It was really bad. And there were some legal things that ended up happening where his company got in trouble for some of the racism and systemic things that they were doing. And he was always talking to me. He's like, you have got to be careful. You have got to know that when you're around certain people, you need to listen. You need to observe. You need to pay attention to their body language. They might say they like you. Look at their face. What are they saying? What are they talking about? How are they treating you? And I remember I started dating a boy, and he was like, listen to me. You know, we're not racist. We have white ancestors. You know, my great grandpa's white. And so he was like, you need to be careful. Because what's going to happen is when you're dating somebody from a different race, it's not even you and him. It's going to be you, him, and his family. Doesn't matter how he feels. How does his family feel? I didn't care. I was like, no, it's just me and him. He's like, listen to me. You have to be careful. You don't understand. Just if you think about it, my parents couldn't drink from the same fountain as the friends I have now. That was only how many years ago? Yeah. And I don't think people realize that. My father, my mother couldn't go to the movies with your parents. Okay, so it was serious. My father talked to me about that, and he said, be careful. He says, Chanel, what are you going to do? Be prepared. What are you going to do when you have a fight with this man and he calls you the N-word? And I was like, he would never call me the N-word. He's like, I am trying to teach you, child. I am telling you, you need to be careful. And I was like, okay, you know, like, what's the big deal? Because I didn't go through what he went through. Not yet. I didn't notice it. My friends, we played, but there was always things said, a lot of microaggressions. I remember saying, let's go inward knocking. And I was like, okay. Didn't think about what that meant.
Oh yeah. That was
huge.
Going around and knocking on someone's door and then running away.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And they would say that. Yeah. I didn't even think about it.
You ever heard of? Yeah.
They would say, we're going inward knocking. Or when we would do, 1, 2, 3, 4, catch it inward by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Yep. They would say that. All of these things that were said, I never knew how bad they were. And to a person there's a difference between racism and a difference between white supremacy. And most of these kids were just say insensitive things, but weren't intentionally trying to hurt. They weren't, it was more like ignorance. Yeah. So they weren't trying to hurt, but nonetheless, it was hurtful. But you just kind of like, okay, it's your friends though. Your friends are allowed to say things because they're your friends. And I don't think people realize just trying to hide blackness. It was a couple of months ago, I typed in movies of the 80s. I was asking everybody, what was your favorite 80s movie? What was your favorite 80s movie? And people were listing their 80s movie. And so I typed in, I wanted to see the top 180 movies. Top 100 movies of the 80s. Do you know that black movies aren't listed?
You're saying there's not one movie?
There's not one movie that was listed in movies from the 80s. I had to type in black movies of the 80s to get them to pop up. They weren't automatically listed. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's telling. Mm-hmm. Suppression of black movies. And all of the movies I was mentioning, people hadn't seen them. They didn't even know what they were about.
I'm trying to think. Like I remember Eddie Murphy did 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. Those were big.
Trading Places.
Those are big.
Yeah.
But
visibility overall, is low.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's movies that people never even heard of that were centered around Black, but it was around Black harm and shame.
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah.
I remember Glory.
Oh,
That was
gosh.
a big one.
Yeah. Deliverance, Glory.
Yeah. Just trying to remember some of the movies I saw that were. Okay. So you're in your childhood playing with kids in the neighborhood and in your middle school years, was it pretty interracial? Did you just have friends of all types?
So growing up,
Backgrounds?
I mostly had Hispanic friends because that was mostly what was in San Antonio around the schools I went to, and Black friends. I didn't, and there was a few more white people as I got into high school, but like elementary and middle school, it was mostly Hispanic and Black, mostly, but not totally.
Okay.
And what was your personality? Were you pretty extroverted? Were you introverted? Like, what were you kind
Loud,
of like?
wild, I think an attention seeker, like, look at me, watch what I can do. I'm going to do this. Am I funny? I thought I was a comedian. I really did. I thought I was Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor. I thought I was all of them. And I tried to be funny. I thought I was funny. So.
What did you have hobbies or talents or pursuits that you were really into going into high school?
I was in choir. I loved to sing.
Ooh, what type of choir?
So I was in a few of them. There was show choir, there was ensembles, there was, there's group choir, like quartets and different things. I didn't know much about choir. I just grew up singing. My dad sang in a group. And so I liked to sing. And then the singing went south when I started singing country because people weren't liking country. But that's what I like to sing. Yeah. I like to sing the country songs. So
okay. Were you a soprano or alto?
I can sing all four parts. I can do first and second soprano, first and second alto.
Wow.
Did you have any favorite like entertainers, like musicians growing up that you kind of modeled yourself?
You know what? Growing up, I've always liked Boyz II Men. I like Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
I liked. Okay, so my sister teases me, but I had this mad fascination with Debbie Gibson. I don't know why, but I liked her voice, and I was obsessed with her.
Was she, I Think We're Alone Now? Is that her?
No, that was Tiffany.
Tiffany. Which one?
But the
Debbie
same.
Gibson?
Debbie Gibson sang Foolish Beat. She sang
What was her
Electric Youth. That's one of her famous songs. But I just liked her because she wrote her own music. She was like Taylor Swift. She wrote her own music. She could play.
Yeah.
And I just was obsessed with it.
Okay.
So I sing a lot of her songs, and she's a soprano.
Okay. All right. So you joined the church when you were 18, the Mormon church when you were 18. Is there anything you want to say about religion or your life in high school that kind of led to you even being open to Mormonism? Like, had you heard of Mormons in high school or before? Did you know anything about them? Were you religious in other ways? Did your life go wrong in some way that made you open to the message of the missionaries? Talk to us about what led to ultimately you taking the discussions.
Okay. So I was out pretty late with some friends. At that time, there was a movie theater that was open till 1. And so I was with a few friends. We were in a station wagon on 410. We were driving home. And I'm 4'11", so I'm short. And I'm sitting in the front seat. There's probably like 4 of us in the front seat and people in the back. And I don't want to put my seatbelt on. And I'm like, I'm not going to. I don't like seatbelts. I'm not going to put it on. And we were driving down 410, and I just had this feeling I needed to put on my seatbelt. And I was like, I'm not putting it on. And I seriously thought, I don't know if I thought or it really happened, but I seriously thought I heard a voice kept saying, put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt. Put on your seatbelt. And I'm like, I'm not going to put on my seatbelt. And I kid you not, right before we got hit, to this day, I believe that I heard a voice yell to me loudly, very aggressively, put on your seatbelt now. And I did. I just was like scared and I put on my seatbelt and we got hit. And so I went forward, I hit the dashboard, and I was in shock, kind of got up, started walking around. EMS came, took us to the hospital, and I was laying there and I thought, okay, if I wouldn't have put on my seatbelt, the EMS guy said I would have gone through the windshield, probably would have died. And then I thought, okay, what happens if I die? I mean, if I'm bad, I go to hell. What if I'm not bad? And what's bad? And what's good? And I didn't have any answers. So after that, I started asking my mom. I started asking my dad. I started asking my uncle. Oh, you just be good and God will take care of you. And I'm like, no. I want to know. I could have died that night. Do I transform into something and become reincarnated? Do I go to hell? Am I going to purgatory? I want to know. And everyone just kind of like, that Chanel's asking questions again. And so I started asking my friends. I remember Patty, I asked her, she was really, really religious. She took me to church with her and I was like, no, this is not working. So then I went to a church with my other friend, Marie, which was like my favorite person. And I went to her church and they had a great youth group and I went with her and that was great, but nobody could answer my question. So then I started going to different churches with different friends that were different religions. Not one of them were the same religion. So then I started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh,
yeah.
How'd that happen?
That happened because I had questions and a friend said, hey, I have a friend that teaches about, you can learn about us. And I said, okay. So I went with her, I think about 6 months, and mostly because I had questions, but then it turned to my questions weren't being answered, but she gave me Doritos and Sprite. So I kept going to visit her.
And what age are you at this point?
I was 18.
Now, I don't know that this even matters, but my understanding was that Prince was Jehovah's Witness. Did you know that?
I heard Prince and also Michael Jackson's family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was that in any way influential to you?
No, I didn't really know what it was. They would come to the house and knock on the door.
Yeah.
And as far as Mormons, I never heard of Mormons or missionaries or anything. I just remember I'd see kids on bikes and didn't really know what that was. I thought they were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
And when I realized what Mormons were, it was a commercial. It would say something about Jesus Christ and the nails in his hands and his feet and these 2 books and him being on the American continent. But I never called a number. I was like, that's another book. I can't do that. But what led me to finally meet the missionaries is my mother was meeting with them. She wanted to read the book and find out about it. I assumed that she was tailoring suits because they had suits, and I saw them in the house a few times and I was just like, okay. And so I finally asked, Mom, who are those boys that you were talking to? She's like, they're Mormon missionaries. You should talk to them. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, I don't know. They have that blue book. And I was like, well, do they have answers? And she's like, I think so. I don't know. Talk to them. And so she told them I wanted to talk to them. One day I was leaving and there was a knock on the door. And I barely opened the door and I saw them and I was like, hi. And they're like, hi. Hey, your mom said you had some questions for us. We're from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're missionaries. We teach about the church. We teach about the book. And I was like, okay. And they were like, okay, so listen. And this is what had me open the door. They said, I don't know how you feel about the things that we're telling you, but you don't even have to believe us. You can ask God. God will tell you for sure if we're lying to you. And that impressed me because everybody else was just saying, this is what you need to do because I said so. And they said, no. You want to know for sure, God will tell you. He will answer you. There's a promise at the end of our book that tells that God will answer you if you ask sincerely. So I was like, ask what? Come in. So I let him in, had my first discussion, and then I said, yeah, I'll take the rest of them. I'd like to know more about God, and I'd like to know. See, I wasn't worried about religion. I wanted to know about God because if I died, I wanted to know where was I going to go. I needed to know that. That was important to me. Well, they said, we know that. We have the plan of salvation. We can explain that to you. And I was like, okay. So then I had the discussions. Things set okay with me. But to be honest, I liked them. I'm 18. They were cute.
They were boys?
Yeah, they were boys.
Okay.
They're cute.
Do you know they were from Utah, Idaho?
One was from Utah and one was from California.
Okay. And they were cute?
Very cute.
American
American,
Boys.
cute boys. And they were nice and they were funny. And they were teaching me things that I thought were appropriate.
Giving you answers to questions.
Giving me
you
answers to questions I had.
Okay.
So
How long did you take the discussions? Do you remember?
I think there was 6, maybe 8. And as soon as I was done, I had an interview with another person, another missionary, I think maybe a zone leader, a district leader. And then I met with the bishop of the ward and then the ward mission leader and was love bombed like crazy. I'm talking, I was all of a sudden, I wasn't just a ignored kid. I was now a kid worth something, a kid that was important because I was learning about God. Growing up, my dad was out of town. My mom did her thing. We kind of just did our own thing. My aunties and uncles were doing their thing in different cities and different sides of the town. My friends I was graduated. So I was kind of like, I wanted to go to school and that didn't pan out. I wanted to, write music and sing and do all that. And that wasn't working out with the school I wanted to go to. And so I met these people in the church and I'm serious. I told my parents I was getting baptized and they weren't having it. So at my baptism.
Really quick, what was it like attending the ward? You're saying that whatever San Antonio ward it would have been. What was the ward experience like prior to your baptism?
So like I said, it was love bomb. A lot of people were giving me a lot of attention for showing up, for being there. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Was it was it super white? Was it Hispanic?
It was mixed. It was white, and there was a few Hispanic families, but mostly white.
Any African Americans?
There was one lady, and she was a lot older. And then there was a family. There was a married Black family.
Okay.
And was that different than the congregations, like your mom's congregation or your dad's?
Oh, way different.
So.
Oh my gosh, it was bizarre. Not bizarre, I guess just.
Like it could have been appealing or it could have been scary.
It was just, I don't know how to describe it. It was just not something I was used to. It was like, for example, somebody sang a song and I went to clap and they were like, no. And I was like, oh, because in other churches, somebody sing, you clap. Mm-hmm. There's music, you clap, and people are singing, you clap for them. And I was like, why wouldn't I clap for them? And they're like, you have to be reverent. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wouldn't. I was like, okay. And then there was everything was just so quiet and just obey and quiet. And I was like, okay. But the congregation was huge. It was a huge ward that covered several different, far parts. It was San Antonio is a huge city. So this ward, some people traveled an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes to get to church. And so there was a few Hispanic families, but mostly white.
And when you say love bombed, what does that mean for people who don't know what that means?
That means that every time I walked in, it was, hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Oh, it's great. You're great. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people like me. They know my name. And then it was, come over to our house. Come eat. We're having this. We're having that. All these activities. Come to this. I was 18, so I didn't go into Young Women's, but all these people their kids were paying attention to me. They were paying attention to me. They were smiling at me. I wasn't in trouble. And growing up in a Black household, you're in trouble a lot. You don't even really know why sometimes, but it's stressful. And I know my parents were going through stuff from the outside world, and my dad dealing with racism and dealing with stuff he did. And then my aunties and their stuff. And it was like always, except for when we were playing games, it was sad. These people weren't sad. They didn't seem sad. They were laughing and, but not loudly. They seemed to be financially successful, which I wasn't around. People I knew were struggling financially on a huge basis. And so these people, they didn't seem like they were struggling at all. They were dressed nice. They had nice cars. They had nice homes. So they were pulling me into their home on a pretty consistent basis. And I like that.
They made you feel loved.
They made me feel very loved. And not only they made me feel loved, they made me feel like I was part of their family. I mean, one family, I didn't have a car. I had a license, but they let me use their car. They trusted me in their house. They gave me their car keys. I wasn't trusted like that by anybody I knew. Not outside my home. Definitely, I was just so shocked that people I didn't know were just like, hey, you can use our car. Go do what you need to do. Come on over. Here's some food. I was like, why are they being so nice to me? Why are they so nice to me? I was puzzled, but happy that they were being nice. That was a love bombing.
Was there a YSA ward or singles ward that you would have attended prior to getting baptized, or
No?
No singles?
Nope, I didn't go to any of that. It was a home ward, the family ward.
I'm interested. It is Texas, and I do think, you're kind of speaking a little bit about home life stress, economic stress in particular, which I think is so important to highlight. This idea of like, did you feel like there was a bit of a prosperity gospel in the Mormon church when you went, as opposed to like what you experienced and attributing it to the religion instead of perhaps race, like this fact that a lot of them were white, as opposed to the struggle and what it means to try to make a living and to try and have financial security amid systems that are basically built up around making that really hard for you. Like, do you feel like part of that attraction was hope? Was this
Absolutely.
hope and sort of
I can be like them. They're showing me a blueprint of what I can be because I'm Mormon. Yeah. These people are Mormon. Other people I know, and they told me that. They were like, okay, we are living this way because we pay tithing. That was a big thing. We pay tithing. You're going to do well if you pay 10%. And I was like, okay, I'm paying it. I want what you have. You're living a good life to what you're showing me. You have a good marriage. Everybody was cookie cutter. They had a husband and a wife and kids and a house and a car and jobs. Yeah. But they were Mormon.
That's right.
And that's what Mormonism, and they explain that to me. This is what Mormonism will give you. This is your life if you're Mormon. If you're not Mormon, you will not get this.
Yes.
And it's mostly because you're paying 10%. And I was like, okay, easy. I'll do that.
Kind of a prosperity gospel.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
That so makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now, for those who don't know anything about Mormonism, if any of you are joining us, the Mormon Church for 150 plus years excluded Black people from, what's called the priesthood or, offices of male leadership in the church. And then we have these temple ceremonies that you do, and Black families were kept out of the Mormon temples for over 150 years. And it wasn't until 1978 where the church changed and allowed Black members to be in full fellowship. Did you know anything about that history? Was it ever discussed prior to your baptism? Did you have any of that knowledge when you were investigating the church?
Not a chance. Race was not brought up at all as far as the priesthood ban, curse of Cain, mark of Cain. Nothing was brought up. No priesthood ban, no temple. All I know is they were saying you go to the temple, but nothing to the fact that had my parents joined before 1978, they wouldn't have been able to take us there. We wouldn't have been sealed out as a family. They wouldn't have been able to go to temple. None of that was discussed with me at all.
Wow. So, and then, that's surprising. But then also, as word gets around with your parents, it may be that your parents or friends of your parents or other members of your community, aunts, might have known that the Mormon church had or has a racist past and even a racist present. Did nobody speak out and let you know?
Oh, they did. But
before your baptism? Yes,
but not necessarily about the priesthood ban. What they did do, my mother, for good concern, a very religious person, was concerned. So was my father. So what they did do is have my uncle come talk to me, which was my mother's uncle, a Methodist preacher. And I remember we were all around. It was my mom, my uncle, maybe some cousins, I don't remember. And he was like, you understand you cannot join that church. And it wasn't more about the race. didn't know about the priesthood ban. I don't believe that. He knew about the Book of Mormon. He was upset about that.
What about it?
He said it wasn't true. It was a Joseph Smith book, but it was not a God book, and that I could not read that book. That was the thing that was going to take me to hell, is reading a book that a bunch of people wrote to go against God's book. And that was not something I needed to do or be a part of.
Okay. So the concern was that Joseph Smith produced a book other than the Bible.
Correct.
That was seen as blasphemy by your uncle.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
He was like, no, that is, if you join for any other reasons, if they didn't have that book, we wouldn't care. That book is damning. You cannot read that book.
So how did you deal with that?
I was, of course, you don't tell me what to do. I'm 18. These people are good. How could good people produce an evil book? That doesn't make sense. And I started quoting to him, by their fruits you shall know them. Their fruits are they're nice. So how could the book be evil if they're nice? Well, then no one said anything. And I said, well, see, there you go.
And did the missionaries encourage you to read the Book of Mormon? And if so,
Always.
What was your impression of the book?
Well, I didn't like it. I like them. I like that they said families could be together forever. I like the social part of the church. I didn't like the doctrine. I didn't believe it. I thought Joseph Smith was cool because I related to the fact that he was asking questions. He said that he was going around asking which church is true and went to all these churches and none were true, because that's what I was doing. So I related to him. And he was young. I was 18. He was, 14? So I was like, I get Joseph Smith. I know what it's like to want to know the truth and which one God wants you. So I never believed the book, but I believed in apostles and prophets, and they claim to have them on earth. So I was like, wait a minute, is that true? Wait, do they really talk to God? There's somebody talking to God right now? I don't care what their book says. I don't have to read the book. And that's what I thought.
Interesting.
Did you ever pray to know if it was true? And if so, what was your experience with that?
So honestly, at the point where they challenged me to read it to know if it was true, I did. I read that whole thing because I like to read. I didn't feel it. I wanted to. And I was so mad at myself that I really just started like trying. I'm like, God, you have to come here right now. You have to show me why it's true. I don't believe this. I don't believe that is true. And you have to help me. You have to convince me. Please convince me, because if you don't, they're going to be mad at me. You know, these are my friends. These are my new people. I don't want them to think that I don't believe it. I don't want to tell them that I don't believe it. And I liked everything else but the Book of Mormon. But then they would say these things and then I would feel so guilty. It's the cornerstone. Without the Book of Mormon, we have no religion. So then I'd feel guilty. Like, oh gosh, you don't want it to be true. I would tell myself, you just don't want it to be true. You're just letting your uncle talk to you and tell you that it's not true and it's an evil book. That's your problem. So I kept reading it. I just kept reading it and kept reading it. And I just didn't. I wanted to so bad though. I did.
Sounds like you kind of had a social conversion where you were converted to the social aspects of the church mostly. Is that fair to say? Plus the doctrine of modern day prophets.
Yeah.
And just somebody saying they had answers made you feel like, whoa, these guys have the answers.
The claim was very powerful to me. How dare you claim that you're talking to God and Jesus Christ? I'm talking to you then. You are bold to claim that in this climate? Oh, I'm definitely joining your church. You know, and I liked Doctrine and Covenants, but I just couldn't get into the Book of Mormon or the other one, the Pearl of Great Price. I couldn't do it. But I liked Doctrine and Covenants because it was Joseph Smith that I feel I can relate with writing.
Do you remember the passages in the Book of Mormon where it said that God cursed Lamanites with dark skin because of their wickedness and to make them loathsome to the white Nephites in the Book of Mormon? Do you remember reading those teachings? And do you remember how you processed them as a black woman?
I didn't like it, so I asked members. I started asking questions, and they would just tell me, hey, there's a lot of things we don't understand. This is God's word. And they would sidestep with, hey, Chanel, it's either true or it's not, right? So if there's things about a pie you don't like, you don't throw away the whole pie, right? You just take the piece out of it that is not desirable, but the whole pie is beautiful and it tastes good, right? And I was like, yeah. And they said, we don't understand why God had this there. We don't know. And I accepted that because, again, they were nice. They smiled at me. They treated me good. They said they love me. So I said, fine. They said, look at the whole Book of Mormon. That is one of a few passages that say some things that are uncomfortable. So what? What about the rest of it? You're going to let this one little passage affect all of the other stories? And I was like, no, you're right. And God hasn't answered me, and he'll answer me in the afterlife. So, okay, that's fine.
You know, early in my Mormon Stories time, I remember interviewing a guy named Darren Smith, and he's a black Mormon and ex-Mormon now. And I was just stunned by the fact that any person of color would ever convert to this church, knowing what was in the Book of Mormon or, its racist past. And he was the first one to sort of say, you don't understand what it's like to be black in America. Because in some sense, we're always picking up the scraps. We're always discriminated against. So like if we held out for a non-racist church, there'd be no church.
Exactly.
And so that shifted my brain, because if you always are having to just take what you can get, then I could see why that history of institutional racism in Mormonism would be just one of many things you'd be considering, because there were a lot of things that were really important to you, like having a good family, being economically successful, thriving. And like, okay, the church has a little racism in this book, or had some really racist things 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Who didn't? Like, how's this going to help me now? I don't mean to put words into your experience.
But that's it.
But that's what, Darren told me.
That's what you have to do. You have to think, okay, so this is the best way I can describe it. If someone tells you, I'm going to kill you today, you get to choose which weapon. I am either going to stab you, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to set you on fire, I'm going to drown you. But you have to pick one. Same thing. It's going to happen. You want to be part of a religion, and they all have this in it because this is the foundation of America. I just didn't know at the time how bad, how significant.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So, we can get to this, but like looking back, do you feel like you were misled, or that important information was withheld for you that you wish you had been told by the missionaries and members at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time, could there have been things they said to you that would have dissuaded you, or were you just so socially converted it almost didn't matter what anyone said?
That would have mattered up front, because I'm just now getting into it. That would have gotten my attention. A passage, not so much, but to know about the temple and the priesthood ban, that's huge. That's not just a passage. That is you're telling a whole group of people that they can't be in the temple while everybody else can. That's important. And not only that, also the preexistence, being valiant in the preexistence. I needed to know that that's what church leaders were teaching about black people. That's important.
For those who don't know, what did the church teach about black people in the preexistence?
So taught that in the preexistence, that the reason why we're having struggles now as black people, and the reason why our skin is dark, is because we were cursed and marked because of the choices we made in the preexistence.
So as spirit children, before any of us came to this earth, Mormon theology is we're all spirits before we came to this earth as spiritual children of Heavenly Father and Mother. And there are these councils of spirits in heaven in the pre-existence where like it was discussed the right plan for earth and right. What was taught.
So the thing that was taught so I have to tell how I first found out about it, because I think that's important. I had got invited to a member's home And the funny thing is I have pictures of that day. I still have those pictures 30 years ago. And we were all having fun. Some missionaries were there. Actually, the missionaries that taught me were there. And we were laughing. We were playing. We were eating. It was a big family. It was a big area. And we were all just kind of talking. And it was the weirdest thing because the host started telling black jokes. And I was like, that is so weird. Why is she telling me black jokes? But I laughed. Everybody was watching me. I was the only black person there. And I just laughed. I was like, that's funny. Oh my God, it's so funny. I didn't know what to do. And then she says, just out of the blue, no prompting, she says, okay, did you know that black people are cursed? Just like that. And I went, what? With what? Like a disease? And she's like, no, listen. Black people are cursed. And I said, what do you mean? She said, oh, do you know what happened in the pre-existence? And I said, no. She's like, okay, so I'm going to tell you. And I can feel the information she's trying to give me. I didn't feel like she was trying to harm me at all. I felt she wanted me to know. She's like, okay, so this is what happens. So, in the beginning, we were all spirit children. We were with Heavenly Father. There was Jesus Christ. There was Satan. You know how he took a third of people with him? I said, yeah. She said, and
Satan
then
did.
Satan took a third of the host of heaven with them. And then the rest of us went with God and Jesus Christ, but not black people. And I went, wait, what? And she said, well, in the pre-existence, black people weren't valiant. And I said, valiant? She said, and they were fence sitters. And I said, what do you mean? Like sitting on the fence? Like, I don't understand. She said, listen, this is what happened. So when Jesus Christ was giving his plan and Satan was giving his plan, you didn't choose either one. You kind of wanted to come down here, get your body and see who would win the war. And then you would choose then. And so you were punished for that. But the good thing is you're here now. You're baptized and now you can prove yourself. So you get your body, you live a good life. Now remember, it's going to be hard because of your decision. Your lot in life is going to be really hard, but you chose that. You knew that. You have a veil put over you. You won't remember, but you guys made these choices. You accepted this as part of the plan. You wanted to be black. You chose to be black. You chose this trial because you knew you can endure and you knew that you were going to be rewarded in the hereafter.
Not just that, but you were a fence sitter. You weren't valiant. And so it's almost like you're black because you were lazy or indecisive.
But that's what she said.
In the pre-existence.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. But she said, this was her face. She said, but you're baptized now. You can prove yourself. You can endure. You will be great.
Just hustle.
Yeah,
hustle.
you will be so great. You will be forgiven. Now it's going to be hard. And you chose this trial. You chose this
It's your
trial.
fault. It's all your fault.
You chose it. So don't complain about it.
Wow,
and I was like, okay, what do I do? She said, you did the first step. You got baptized. And I was like, I know. I did. I was so excited to prove myself. At first I was offended and like, what? No, I couldn't have been bad. No, I follow rules. I do what I'm told. And then she told me that and I said, okay, when she said, you can fix it though. I was so happy. You can fix it.
Wow.
Everybody else was around. Nobody stepped in and said she's lying, or they were looking at me all, see, you're here now and you're baptized and we're here to help you and we're here to push you. And I was like, yes, I have a team. I have support. I'm on this team now and I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the best one ever. I'm even going to be a missionary because this and that. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, you just watch. I'm going to get back there and I'm going to say, I endured. I did all of that. And he's going to be so happy with me.
And for those who don't know, this teaching that Chanel just laid out was Mormon doctrine for well over 100 years, starting with maybe with Joseph Smith, probably Joseph Smith, but definitely with Brigham Young, all the way through the 2000s and 2010s until the church finally issued a Gospel Topics essay where they sort of said, well, that wasn't doctrine. Those were the teachings of men, which was not true, right?
Not true at all.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Because Mormon first presidencies signed statements affirming these teachings as doctrine, right?
Yes. And made it a stamp to say, excuse me, this is doctrine. They made that very clear. Don't even question. This is doctrine.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, honestly, it's like at such a basic level, it is so like you cannot trust who you are. So hustle and work really hard, and we've got you, and you're saved because of us, and continue on. But like also, it's sort of like they give you this identity, this past that you never asked for, that's like deeply problematic, and then your charge is to spend your whole life trying to prove
Trying to
you're not
catch
that.
up.
So insidious.
It's almost like they're inoculating you as well for the racism you're likely going to experience within
Yep.
Mormonism. Because they're basically saying, well, it's going to be super hard for you in this church, but it's your fault.
That's right.
You did it to yourself.
You chose
and if
it.
you chose it. If you work really hard, you can endure the racism that we're about to put you through.
But never rest.
Exactly.
Like you will never rest.
I am serious.
Work.
Looking back. Sorry. Just looking back. Wow. I was so eager to please. I was so happy that I was being loved, that they could have told me I was a serial killer, but I could be redeemed. That was a thing, that I can be redeemed for being so bad and so wicked and so awful. But you can be redeemed. You're a serial killer, you're a terrible person, but guess what? You can be forgiven for that.
And guess what? Like, it's like redemption is serving us. It's us using your labor, us getting your money, and that's your redemption. We want your free service. We want you showing up. We
Your
want
obedience, right?
Yep. We want your obedience. We want your time. We want your resources. And that is the recipe for your redemption.
Also, for the church to dismiss or get rid of the perception that it's racist, it needs Black members to say this church is awesome. So it also needs kind of your PR, it needs your testimony and your reputation that the church is actually good for Black people, right?
Oh, yes. And I gave it to them. I did PR for them on my mission. I was on a panel discussion with a bunch of different religious leaders, and I said exactly what they wanted me to say, even though I had just gotten into it with an elder in my mission. He was not good. It was really racist, the thing he had said to me. And I still remember this day what I did to him because of what he said to me. We were at a Brahms ice cream in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. I grabbed his ice cream and I licked it and I said, when you lick this, now you're going to be Black and you'll receive all of the stuff I'm receiving. I was so mad of the
But what
things.
led you to want to do that? Well, back up in the story.
He was saying,
So you were at an ice cream store with some missionaries.
we were on P-Day. We were at Brahms in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And he was saying some really dumb things and they were racist. And I'm just looking at everyone like, you're not going to say anything? You're not going to say anything? And they were like, sisters, don't. Contention is of the devil. And I'm like, then I'm evil. But this is okay? This is not okay. So I remember they freaked out because I grabbed his hand. And they're like, you can't touch him. I grabbed his hand and he was really tall. I pulled down the ice cream and I licked it. And I told him, you lick it. Now you're going to be Black. You're going to receive everything I receive. Because he was like, well, the thing about Black people, because he was teaching somebody and he was like, well, they're not going to be worthy because this. And well, their family life is like this. And they're just so violent and they're so this. And I was like, Black people are like that? I'm here. Am I like that? Yeah, we're not talking about you, sister. And I was just like, what is your problem? And he was just saying these really...
kind of perpetuating racial stereotypes.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. And I was getting really mad. Spirit of contention, he was bringing contention by the things that he was saying.
Yeah.
And one of them was really upset because his sister had a baby with a Black man that wasn't supporting her and he was going off. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. I don't need to hear this. Well, this is how Black people are. They are never committed. They're never committed to anything. Look what they did in the pre-existence. And I was like, all right, that's it. And then I just started saying things. I was really upset because nobody was defending me. No one was saying, hey, this is not okay. They're like, just be quiet. Why do I have to be quiet? Just be quiet. Just let it go. Why do I have to let it go? This is wrong. This is wrong. you know? And then people come to me after, it's like, yeah, you're right. Well, why didn't you say anything to him? Why did I have to fight for myself by myself?
Yeah, and this was on your mission, did you say? That you kind of came alive in this way?
My mission was the worst as far as racism, because it was in Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas. It was the members. And my mission companions saw that, and they were just like, I'm like, she just called me an N-word. She just called me a coon. And she's like, just stop.
Members
Oh, yeah.
of the Mormon Church called you the N-word.
Call me coon. I remember she kept calling me coon and was laughing about it. And I was like, and my companion was like, just
wow.
don't say anything. I'm like, because we are told in our mission, whatever the members give you to eat, you eat it, you drink it, you don't question what they give you. It's offensive. And don't fight with the members, because, you know, if they say stuff or they do things, you don't question them, you don't challenge them, you just keep the spirit. But in front of my companion, I'm sitting there. It's not like it was a conversation and it slipped out, directly saying things to me on purpose. And I'm sitting there taking these words and looking at my companion like, she says nothing, nothing, but to just take it.
I want to come back to your mission, but we passed over your actual baptism.
Oh,
and,
wow, sorry.
Maybe not, but I do want to cover a few things before your mission. So when you come back to your family and you say you're going to get baptized after they had expressed concerns, what was it like to tell your parents, your siblings, your aunts, uncle, whoever, that you were going to get baptized, and what was that like?
I think I'm so glad you came back to that, because I think there's two important things about my baptism that's really important. Is my family wasn't having it. They were really scared for me, and they were really not supporting that at all. They didn't want me to do it. They were like, don't do this, Chanel, don't do it, don't do it. And then I told some friends. There was an older couple I was babysitting for. I told them, and they were just like, nope, don't do it. And to tell you how serious I took the baptism, I think this is very important, very telling. I had on white shorts and like a sweatshirt, and I was playing football with my friends right before the missionaries picked me up to get baptized. So I didn't understand the significance or the sacredness of how important it was supposed to be. I was just getting baptized. There was 2 missionaries picking me up because nobody would take me. And at that time I didn't have a car. And I went and got baptized. I'm sure the members had a fit, but nobody made me feel uncomfortable at that time. I had shorts on, white shorts. It was a blue and white striped sweatshirt, and I had a football. I was playing football.
So you weren't wearing some type of white dress when you got baptized?
When I actually got into the water and got baptized, somebody had a white dress ready for me.
Okay.
But I showed up. I didn't show up in a nice dress. Most people show up in a nice dress or a suit. I showed up in short shorts and a sweatshirt after playing football, kind of sweaty.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
They probably thought, this uncultured kid. I didn't know. Nobody said, you need to dress up. It's a baptism. I've gone to baptisms. People wore shorts. I didn't think anything about it.
Did family come and attend your baptism? Or
No, nobody.
No?
Just me and the ward. That's why I'm saying I imprinted on them. They were all there. I come out of the water and I see this huge room full of people looking at me, happy, smiling, crying for me, for something I did. So yeah, I was going to be loyal to them.
Some were crying. Some of the members.
Yeah, people were crying and happy, and there was the ward mission leader who became one of my closest friends, him and his wife and their family. There was other people. I mean, I was looking at this room full of people that were nodding their head like, you did good, you did good. I did good? Okay, good. I'll keep doing good.
I imagine that felt amazing.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, I love my family, but our family was hard. You know, my mom was home. My father was gone on road trips for his job. My aunties and uncles were all over the place. My cousins were doing their thing. I didn't have any kind of support. I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't hanging out with anybody. And these people were like, oh, we love you. What can we do for you? Is there anything you need? I was like, what? Me? You can do something for me? I want to drink at Sonic. Okay. What? I'm 18 and I'm still kind of young-minded. I'm not adult-minded. I'm 18 and kind of like testing the waters. Like, why are they being nice to me? People aren't nice. San Antonio is a high crime place. There's a lot of fight. I got in lots of fights in middle school. Lots of fights. Physical fights. And so these people aren't fighting. They're not swearing. They're not hitting people. They're not going to beat me or hit me. I'm joining them. I'm hanging out with them.
Yeah, I think it's so important to highlight this idea of, particularly with populations that feel unsafe perpetually. So that could be because of where you live. That could be, if you're a marginalized human being, or how do you overstate what it means if you walk through the world where so much of your experience you're feeling unsafe, to then shift to a place where you do feel safety and you do feel a sense of belonging. It just makes all the sense in the world why that would be moving, attractive, something that you really, really have looked to. Yeah.
Well, what does love finally look like? It looks like people smiling at you. It looks like people hugging you. I didn't grow up like that. I have good family. Don't misunderstand that. But my aunties weren't, my uncles and my cousins, they weren't huggy and you didn't say I love you. You had to be strong. I mean, think about a Black culture. You have to be strong. I am so sick of that. I don't want to be a strong Black woman. I'm tired of hearing I'm strong. I don't want to be strong. I just want to live. And you have to think about that. I saw my aunties and my uncles go through hell and always having to fight and be strong. So now I'm in an environment where I'm not having to fight and I can just be, and people are hugging and shaking each other's hand. And, oh, okay. I'm definitely joining that. I'm definitely going to be in that environment.
What was it like being embraced by a predominantly white community? Because you're saying your high school was mostly Hispanics and Black people. You lived in a part of town that probably was not predominantly white. What was it like to have this large group of white people in suits and ties and dresses embracing you and asking you if they could do things for you and crying for you?
Exactly. It was hope. It was like, hey, guess what? We're going to model the life you want. You want this life, okay? This is how you get it. This is me. This is my wife. These are my children. This is our house. You can be like this too, because this means you're going to be happy. This means you're not going to struggle. This means that things will be better for you. You're going to have lots of friendships. And they kept saying over and over, you have to come to church. And the reason why you have to come to church is because you need to be around other people that think like you. You need to be around other people that are celebrating God the way we need to, the correct way, with authority. Authority was huge. They kept saying authority. We have the authority. We have the right authority to bestow the Holy Ghost upon you. We have the right authority to tell you what you should be doing. Nobody else has that. We are the only true church on this earth. Do you know what that means? That means whatever Jesus Christ had back then, we have it now in this church. They made those claims very, very boldly. And I thought, being scared of God, they weren't struck down, so they couldn't have been lying. Because I was taught that if you lie and you blaspheme against God and say you make a claim, God is going to strike you down. That's what I learned growing up. They weren't struck down, and they were saying they talked directly to God and that he gave them the authority to teach these things. So I'm going to listen. I don't always agree. I don't really know what they're saying, but they're not struck down. So they're telling the truth.
So any stories about being Mormon in your ward prior to your mission? and what kind of got you on the mission ultimately? Was it prior to your mission, was your Sunday ward experience positive? Did people's behavior of you change after you got baptized? And what was it like being a Mormon prior to your mission?
Yeah, like were you still love bombed? Did you still experience like a lot of love?
That's one of the most reasons why I went on my mission, is because they talked about missionary work. And that's what I was used for, is missionary work. That's what I was used for, is to my testimony. I'm a Black person saying that the church is wonderful. Look at me. I didn't know about all that other stuff yet. And look at me. Even though I heard that at that party, it was kind of, no, remember, just don't focus on that. Focus on everything else, okay? And I did. And so remember, so now I'm isolated. I'm starting to be isolated from friends. They don't believe like you. They don't have the authority. You got to come with us. You know, your family, you can love them, and we're going to show you how. You come here, you learn from us, and then you can give them the gospel, and then they'll convert. Okay? But you can't be in that and convert them. You need to come here. And I was like, okay. So I spent a lot of time in their homes. I spent the night. I babysat their kids. I cleaned their house. I did those things, and I was only around them, only around Mormons. You know, these Mormon families. And like I said, my family did think that was weird. They're like, why are you spending the night? I'm like, I don't know. It's nice over there. And I would leave. I was 18. It's not like they could tell me I couldn't. And so I would just go over there and, like I said, watch their kids, clean their house, help them with things. And in return, they were loving. They were fun and, calm. And I grew up around a lot of violence, a lot of physical and verbal violence. None of them were like that. Not in front of me. So why wouldn't I want to be around that? The kids seemed happy. They had toys. They had things I didn't have in my house. And growing up in Texas, I don't know about you, but in Texas, in the communities, a sign of wealth and prestige was 2-story homes or a pool. Well, some had pools and some had 2-story homes, and then some had massive homes. And so that is a sign that you're doing good by God, is what you had. It was always about money and class.
Wow.
And I didn't want to be, I wanted to be around that. And so they would tell me, you got a good testimony. They only patted me on the back when I bore my testimony with, a bonfire of a testimony, or when I was teaching other people, ward missionary, nursery leader, nothing else. And, growing up, you're shushed a lot to just do what you're told, be quiet. You don't talk back to your parents. You don't talk until spoken to. Well, now they're asking me to speak. I have these people now valuing or seeming to value my voice, but only if it was about certain things. If it was about missionary work, then they wanted me to talk. But if it was asking questions about the doctrine or the gospel, it was a no.
That conditioning kicks in. Right?
So I learned real fast. Mm-hmm. The more you bear your testimony, the more you learn the doctrine, the more you defend the church and the PR, the more support you'll get.
That's right, yeah.
Like, I don't think this is probably conscious in the minds of many Mormons, but we all know about our racist past. We all know about the exclusion policies and the priesthood ban and the temple ban. And we all know that we're largely a white church. So psychologically, it's going to feel very good to an Orthodox Mormon to have a Black person join the church and to bear their testimony in the church. It's almost like that would help us feel repentance, kind of like social collective repentance. It's like, hey, yeah, we were super racist. We still are kind of super racist. But hey, if Black people are joining and bearing their testimony, then maybe we're doing okay now.
And we helped her. And we treated her good.
Right. So you were kind of helping them feel better about their racist past and present a little bit, maybe.
Absolutely, because things will slip out of their mouths and I didn't care. As long as I got Sonic or, I'm 18, I'm getting things that my parents weren't, they didn't have things and these people did. And they were, we'll give this to you if you, and I was like, okay, I don't care. I will say whatever you want me to say. You keep treating me like this, done. That's a good deal.
Yeah. Yep. Goes back to those basic needs, just trying to get our basic needs met.
And I don't mean to paint it all as nefarious, because in their minds, they're just loving people. They're just being kind to people. They're excited for you. They want what's best for you.
And I believe that.
So they're not rallying around you in their minds to bribe you or to manipulate
not
you,
at all.
or even for self-serving reasons. In their minds, they're just loving a new member and wanting the best for you.
And I believe that, because with some of them, it was like, so imagine never having chocolate before. You've never tasted chocolate before. And they all have. And they're like, hey, guess what? Have you ever had chocolate? And you're like, nope. And they're like, here's some chocolate. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to feel good because they see that they've had this chocolate.
Meaning prosperity?
Prosperity.
Yeah.
And now they're like, would you like some chocolate? And I can feel they meant it.
Yeah.
They meant it. And then things change. But at that time they meant it. And they wanted me to have chocolate because they had chocolate and they wanted to share. I believe they meant no harm in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think what's hard about that, and I do feel like strongly about this part, is the hard thing about intention is that it's connected to the level of awareness you have. So it's important to say, yes, that they didn't intend to do harm, or they weren't intending to take on a role of white savior, or they weren't intending to do these things. And it is also important to say it does harm. It does harm,
Oh,
even
very
when
much
you
so.
don't intend it. And I think that's important. And that's part of being nuanced and realizing the paradox and why this is complex.
Well, I don't know. We want to kind of follow the timeline, but did it feel like harm at the time? Or was the harm, are we going to hear about the harm later?
I think yes and no, because it started to be harmful later. You started to see that what that was giving was a cost.
It kind of the kindness lures you in, right? Mm-hmm. For harm that maybe, it's like a sugar coating. I don't want to put words in.
No, it's, so I don't even know if this fits the timeline, but this is what I started noticing. When I was hanging around these members that were love bombing me and giving me chocolate and Sonic and whatever, I can feel that they meant no harm, but then they started molding me. I remember one said, listen to me, you're 18, you cannot vote Democrat anymore. You cannot do that. My parents voted Democrat, and he said, don't do that. And I was like, why? He was like, let me explain to you the difference between the Democrat and a Republican. He loved Rush Limbaugh. He gave me the books. He quoted him. He listened to him on radio. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, listen to me. Democrats, let's say that you're in a boat and there's people out in the water that need a rope to get to the boat. A Democrat, let's say that you only need 50 yards of rope. A Democrat wants 150 yards of rope, more rope than they need. A Republican will only take like maybe 10 yards of rope and swim to it. That's the difference between the Democrat and a Republican. And so you want to be Republican because it will always teach you to work for what you want. Democrats want everything to be handed to them and way more than they need. So don't vote Democrat. You're now a member. You're understanding this is how it is. And I was like, oh, okay. And I remember telling my dad, oh my gosh. And I didn't really understand politics then. I was just like, Dad, I can't vote Democrat. And I told him that story. I think he wanted to smack me. I told him the story. This is what Democrats do. If they need 50 yards of rope, they want 150. A Republican takes 10 and swims to it. And he was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, well, that's how it is. He's like, are you brainwashed? I was like, no, think about it. And I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. But I remember my dad was just like, okay, get out of my face. Just go. But I didn't understand that. Now I do. Oh my gosh. But I'm 18. These people, these respectable people that are doing better, that have now increased in wealth and prosperity and different things. They were doing better. Why wouldn't I listen to him? And my parents never owned a home. He just moved from a smaller one to a bigger one. So that made sense to me. You know, I didn't know. I was just thinking about my brain. And I thought, and then judge my parents, you know?
And you mentioned love bombing being a key component, but I think, what I'm hearing is there's this huge layering of you're depraved, though. They gave you a history you didn't know about before you were born, where you're lacking in some way, and then and that is what makes you hustle, and then makes you kind of one down from, your congregation who's white. And that allows them to now be in a state of power above you, to say things like, you know what, we don't vote that way, or we don't do that. And for you to be like, well, I don't have what you have because I have, I'm a woman of color, so I guess I'll listen to you. And so the insidiousness may be planted then, to answer your question, because you were like, but was it lovely in the beginning? And I just think it's important to kind of see the planting of it was then. And that's kind of part of it. So it was love bombing, but it was also sort of giving you this depraved sense of yourself that then, made you easier to use a little bit.
Absolutely. I don't know how any other way to put it, as I think about all these times being in homes and listening to things, consistently being told that you're less, but I can help you become better, always fixing me, my looks, what I ate, how loud I was. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, what's up? And no. Shh. Reverend, you need to be reverent. Just toning it down. I want to play cards. We don't play cards. You don't do face card. Everything about me that was me, I was no longer me.
Wow.
I was no longer me. I was them. Right. They were taking this person and taking everything about her that was wrong and making a better person. Because that person right there, that person wasn't good. That person, you didn't love that person. You loved what it did for you and your community. You didn't love this 18-year-old that was just like, oh my gosh, I want to do right. I want God to like me. I want to be liked. Just stripping down and rebuilding to what you think is good. This little 18-year-old is not good, but we're going to make her good.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, two things occurred to me as you were telling that story. One was, I'm imagining in the member's mind, they're saying don't vote Democrat because Democrats do this, that, or the other. I wonder if in their minds they were thinking people of color do this, that, or the other, vote Republican, but maybe vote more white. Like in my mind, I wonder whether that member was thinking people of color when he said Democrat, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I agree, because I brought up my parents. Like, we were talking about politics because at that time some things were going on, and it's like, well, how will you vote? Because I think it was Bush, Clinton, and my parents were talking about Clinton, and he's like, no, you can't do that. Clinton is not for the people. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, He's like, don't vote Democrat. And we don't do that. This is why. Rush Limbaugh. And I was like, okay. So I started listening to Rush Limbaugh.
I have a question about you with regard to your family during this time. Do you feel like your relationship with your parents, your siblings, your extended family, was it like strained? Was it impacted?
Oh, very much so. Because part of it was a mindset, well, I'm better than you because they told me I'm better than you because I found the truth. You don't have the truth. And I need to save you. I need to convert you. They're not good enough being my parents. I needed to fix them. I mean, look at your childhood. Was it perfect? Did you have this? Did you have that? No. Then you need to convert them so that you can have this. You cannot have a good, prosperous life without the gospel. Facts. Look at us. And I was like, man, I got to fix my parents. I got to fix them. I was fixing people. I wanted to fix people.
Right.
I never thought that before. I just enjoyed people. It was just fun to hang out and play spades and do their. Now I was fixing everybody.
Yep.
Very strange. I mean, how you feel is now your 18-year-old telling you you're terrible and that you need to do better. And I remember, here's a great thing though. But one of the missionaries that taught me, I remember he was over for a dinner appointment and I had made them dinner and I was giving my mom a hard time. I was like, you need to put that cancer stick down and you need to stop drinking that sin coffee and stuff like that. And he's like, come here. And I was like, what? He goes, let's go outside. He's like, don't you ever talk to your mom like that. He was like, everybody else is like, And he was like, you don't talk to your mom like that. Okay, what makes you think you're better than her? Everybody else is like, no, you are better than her though. You don't do that stuff. And he was like, no, this is wrong.
Right.
This is wrong. He was one of the very few people that spoke up. Very few. Yeah. Everybody else liked that mentality. Yeah. Fix your parents. Fix your family. They can't be eternal to what they're doing. That's not going to happen. You'll never get to the temple with them if they're doing that.
Right.
Those things are wicked. So my mom was wicked.
So Chanel, so you joined the church and it kind of puts a strain on your family relationships where you kind of feel like they're not good enough and you're not good enough. How long was it between your baptism and your decision to serve a mission? If I'm got my dates right, you probably would have gone on a mission at age 21 or later because this would have been before the age change. Is that right?
Right.
So you were a member for a few years before deciding to serve a mission?
Yeah, so I joined in 1990, November, and my mission was from September 1993 to March of 1995.
Okay, anything else about your Mormon story before we talk about your decision to serve a mission?
No,
Did you date Mormons? Did you do any single?
I tried to.
Yeah?
Oh, I tried to.
Before your mission?
Before my mission.
Do you want to talk about dating
Yes.
Mormons before your mission?
Yes, I tried to. Oh my gosh. So when I joined the church, I went right into Relief Society. Okay. And so I'm around a bunch of women that are older than me. You know, they're 40, they're 50, they're in their 60s. And I don't remember who it was. Some of the youth are like, hey, do you know there's a singles ward? And I was like, what do you do there? And they're like, no, it's a ward. It's just people that are single. So you can meet people. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like fun. They said, and then you could date people. And I was like, that sounds like fun. And so I started attending a singles ward and meeting people and just kind of hanging out with men, but not really dating. I tried to, like I was interested, had crushes on, but they always were more like, one guy I remember, he was Hispanic and he was like, the hand like, hey, you know, we could be friends, can't really date. I didn't understand at the time it was about race. I thought it was just he wasn't interested. You know, later on he did explain the race you can't mix. But at the time,
what do you mean you can't mix?
He said that interracial dating is frowned upon by the church and that is something that you can't do. He said it's against the church policy. And I said, okay. Like, I didn't like it, but I'm not going to fight their policy. I said, okay. So then there was
You just accepted that.
I accepted it. Like, I was never trying to challenge the church. I kept asking questions, and when they would shut it down, I just stopped. Yeah. You know, I was like, okay.
Yeah, what people who weren't raised Mormon won't know is that up until I think even this year, it might still be there. It's officially taught in Mormon church curriculum that interracial marriage is bad.
Really bad.
Not preferable. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was with him. But then there was a guy that he was a lot older than me and he was absolutely amazing. And I remember I was crushing on him really bad. And I was assuming he was crushing on me too, because I remember the conversation we had and he was like, Chanel, I got to tell you something. He said, this is not going to go forward. And he wasn't mean. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, Chanel, there is no way I can take you up north. I was almost said the state, but I'm not trying to out him. And I was like, why? And he's like, my family is not going to go for that. That is not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. I said, why? He's like, we can't mix the races. And he was a lot older than me. And he was explaining that his parents came from a time that they just weren't open. Even though he was open, his family wouldn't be open. And he was like, if we have a wedding, don't you want, people to be happy there? And I was like, okay. And then he said this, oh my gosh. He said, Chanel, I need to find a white Chanel. He said, everything about you is so cool. So it's like a slap in the face, but then no, you're fine.
The backhanded compliment.
Yeah, I remember. And he was amazing. And he was like, I just got to find a white Chanel. This and this and this about you is so great, but I need to find a white version. And I was like devastated. He was so cool. And I was like, wait, just because I'm black, he said, you have to understand, we can't do that. The church is not going to allow that. I said, allow? I said, they can tell us that we can't. And he was like, the church is not going to allow that. He never really answered and said yes or no. He said, the church is not going to allow that and my family's not going to have it. And I was like, okay. All right. And I was so bummed because with him, as opposed to another one that was more devastating, it was okay. Not what he said, but it was more okay that relationship didn't work out. Because I think I was like mentally, he was professional and busy. I was young. I think I was 19, and I think I keep forgetting his age. I thought I was older, but I wasn't. I think I was 19, and I think he was probably maybe 30. So he's a lot older, and I was kind of goofy. So to me, it was like, okay, probably better for him. And I wasn't really focusing on the race thing at the time. But when he said the white version, a white Chanel, the sad thing is, I was like, yeah, that probably is better. Yeah, that's probably better. I was accepting those things, and I thought he was so great. I thought, yeah, good for him. He can find a better.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Oh, crazy.
So what led to you wanting to serve a mission, deciding to serve a mission?
Members kept telling me that missionary work is everything. And I was so good at it. And that I had a great testimony and I can help bring other Black people that I can also, because I could help them understand that I'm okay and I'm safe there. And that my testimony was so good. My conversion was just so good that sharing that with people would just be great. Basically, it's like when you think about the Boy Scouts, all their different badges, it was like a badge. If you go on a mission, then you'll get this badge. If you do this, you'll get this badge. So it was another badge, lots of support, lots of recognition, lots of pats on the back, pat on the head, how great of a person I was, not because of Chanel, but because I was going to go on a mission to help the church.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, even subconsciously, the church has to collectively feel like it, number one, needs to atone for how it's treated Black people historically, but it can't have white people saying this church is not racist. It needs Black people saying this is a great church.
Absolutely.
And so there would be a real cultural incentive to get you out on that mission, to be a Black face for the church.
Now, I think this is really important. It's one thing to have a Black member of the church that's kind of there and doesn't know the doctrine or the scriptures or anything, but I was in it. I'm talking, my scripture mastery was done fast. My discussions were memorized fast. I was leading that. I was, we had to learn 65 scriptures for scripture mastery, but they only quizzed us on like 20 years. I knew them all. Like I wasn't messing around. And so that was pushed, more of she knows her stuff. And so when I went to deal with this, and I realize now what they were doing, when I went to go talk to the ministers and pastors of other religions that were Black, I could school them. They're not going to mess with her. She knows her stuff. She knows it better than us. Send her. So not only does she know the doctrine and know about scriptures, she's Black and she's smiling and she's not complaining. Send her. And I went happily.
So you were called where?
I went to the Oklahoma Tulsa mission.
And your family's reaction to you getting a mission call?
No. They were like, my dad was terrified. My mom was just like, what are you doing? This is goofy. My father was terrified. Like, I'm being serious. He was scared to death. And he's like, don't go. He's like, they're going to hurt you. They're going to do this. Especially when he found out where I was going. I didn't know much about Arkansas. That was one of my areas.
Oklahoma and Arkansas?
It was over 4 different states. It was like the bordering parts of these states. It was Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas.
Wow. Yeah.
And so he was terrified. He was really scared to death and said, this is not, and I remember his face. This is what I said that freaked him out the most. He said, Chanel, if you go out there in these racist parts, because I went from Texas right until another southern place that was really racist. He said, they're going to hurt you out there for knocking on their doors, talking to them about God. People don't like you messing with their religion. And I said, Dad, and he goes, you could be killed. And I said, good. If I'm killed while I'm on a mission, I'm in the celestial kingdom. And he was like, what are you saying? I'm like, if I die while I'm on my mission, that's like the second anointing. I'm going to heaven. That's fine with me. And he didn't take that well. For good reason. I look back on it now, but at the time I was happy to die on my mission. Could you imagine Sister Johnson dies on her mission, serving the Lord? That's great. That was my mindset. It's not my mindset now, but it was my mindset.
Wow. I have to ask, what was it like to go through the temple for you prior to your mission? The temple endowment ceremony, how was that for you?
Besides the Book of Mormon, I didn't like that at all. Not even a little bit. I didn't like that.
What about it?
I didn't like the initiatory.
Why not?
I didn't like people touching me.
Was it back when it was kind of naked on the side?
Oh, yeah.
Like a white shield, a poncho.
Oh, gosh.
And they're touching different parts of your
and saying,
naked body.
This is for this and this is for that. And I did not like that at all. I thought that was the weirdest, creepiest, freakish. And that's when I started getting like, okay, what am I in? Because there's being things told to me outside from all my friends and family about the church. And now I'm in this place. Nobody warned me, told me anything. They just said it's going to be a beautiful, wonderful spiritual experience. And then that happened. Yeah. But you have to smile. When you go out of there, you've got these people. My parents didn't take me. Great members took me. So I can't go in there and say, oh my gosh, that was so weird. I don't like that. I have to go, this was great. And I am dying inside because I hated every minute of that. I did not like that. But what am I supposed to do? I'm going to go on a mission. And I did tell a friend, and she said, you don't understand everything right now. You're feeling weird because, maybe you're not really worthy. So then I started thinking, what did I do? Oh, that time I cussed. And, yeah. So it was just weird.
What about the actual endowment part, the film, the endowment part?
So I felt I didn't like any of that either because there was a little bit in me saying, this feels like there's like the part of the film where he's like, if you don't do this and,
Satan. When Satan is telling,
that didn't feel lovely and spiritual and sweet. That felt like you do what I say or you're going to burn. And I was like, I didn't like that. I was like, and then to depict Eve a certain way as a woman and it's her fault. And, the innocence, and that there was no choice that they had. I didn't like that vibe. I did not like that vibe. I liked my friends and the people that were with me. I didn't like anything about that vibe. And then you have to understand, everybody around me looked like what? They said what happened in the temple, what was going to be in heaven. Nobody looked like me in the temple.
Meaning they're all white.
They're all white.
And they're all dressed in white.
And they're all dressed in white.
Yeah.
So there's nothing about me that would be in the celestial kingdom. That was devastating to me. And I didn't know how to feel about that. And then I really, really internalized what an evil person I was for feeling like that in the Lord's house. You bad person, how dare you freaking feel that way in the Lord's house? You are so messed up. There's problems with you. That's how I felt. I really let myself have it. Like, you disgusting person, how dare you? You're thinking these things feel bad and weird. You're not spiritual enough. You're not reading your scriptures. You're a bad person.
I remember reading it wasn't until I read the autobiography of Malcolm X where he talks about, and not in Mormonism, just in Christianity and in white culture, white is equated with good.
Yeah.
And black and dark is equated with bad. And it just occurred to me, Satan's robes in the temple are dark, right?
Yep.
And Lamanites are dark, and heaven, the celestial kingdom is white and bright, and Nephites are white, and the prophets white, and Jesus in Mormonism is white. And there's just this subtle message that dark is bad, Satan is bad. If you are not righteous in Mormonism, what's your countenance like?
You're not white and delightsome if you're good.
Right.
That's what you're going to be changed to white and delightsome
good,
after.
You're what?
You're going to be dark and loathsome.
Yeah. So that, I guess that would really come across in the temple of all places, that whiteness is good.
Well, when you're talking, it takes me back to that moment when that member first told me about, remember I told you they're telling black jokes? Man, I hope she's listening so she can know that it was just bad, that she's not a bad person. One of the jokes that they told was referencing white babies as angels and black babies as bats. That was the joke. And the other one was, why does black people not play in the sand? Is because the cats will cover them up because they're dark like poop. And that's the jokes that were being told right before she told me about why would they tell me those particular jokes? It wasn't them, it was her. Why did she tell me those jokes? Why did they laugh too? Why didn't they say, black babies are bats, white babies are angels? That's horrible. It's terrible.
So terrible.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So you left the Mormon temple ceremony feeling what?
Questioning a lot. And then questioning myself, thinking you're like doubting Thomas. You're doubting this beautiful place that they told you about because you feel weird, because you don't understand, because you're not spiritually equipped enough to get it. Shame on you.
So you turn it back on yourself.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with you. If this feels wrong.
Absolutely. Everybody else is smiling and crying and you're sitting here questioning. Shame on you. You have no right to question the Lord or what happens in his house. Yeah, I was really internalizing how evil I must have been. Why is everybody else crying and so happy and you're having doubts and you're questioning things that happen in there? You are not even close to being equipped to understanding.
I guess that teaching of being a fence sitter in the pre-existence might come to the back of your mind then. It's like, well, if I'm not feeling the Holy Ghost in the temple, maybe there is something spiritually inferior about me.
Absolutely. I have to keep going to learn to be better. And trust me, I wanted to. I wanted to love every minute of everything they promised would happen. And it was the most cruel letdown. It was so... just everything about it. Like, and I feel weird now saying it because I feel like I know better, but sometimes in the back of my mind, I'm like, see, you still weren't spiritual. I know better, but I don't. I'm still like, how could everybody feel so spiritual and say they have spiritual experience and you didn't? It's because you're wicked. That's why. It's because you're a bad, carnally minded woman.
Those things, they can stick and stay.
Yeah, and they do. I question to this day why I didn't have a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
It was pretty, and that was my spiritual experience, is how beautiful it was. But that's it.
Yeah. White and beautiful.
The white and the chandeliers and the color, it was pretty, clean, and pristine.
Yeah.
That's it. And then the people I was with, not the experience at all.
Right. Okay, so tell us what you want to tell us about your mission to the South. I mean, I don't think people realize I grew up in Texas, but and there could be racism everywhere, including in Texas, obviously. But I think about my upbringing in Houston, or what I know about like Austin or Dallas or San Antonio. For me, there's a categorical difference between that and sometimes, Alabama or Mississippi or Arkansas or some of those other southern states. I don't know exactly how I would describe it, but it's different in terms of, I just have to say it, how many white people would treat black people. I don't know if that was your experience, but sometimes Texas is lumped into the South in ways that it's a little bit unique to some of the other southern states.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right or not? Or?
Yeah, Texas is a huge state. So you have different diasporas. I mean, it's just, it's different. I mean, you've got Tex-Mex and Hispanic, and you've got Black, and you've got Asian. I mean, you have a lot of military bases there too. So you have a lot of different people
from other places.
Yeah.
And the oil, at least to Houston, the oil companies brought a lot of cultural diversity.
Yes.
Yeah.
The oil companies, the military, the schools.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is a little bit different too is the police. The police are Hispanic, Black, a lot, mostly white, but at least I haven't seen any Black police officers in Utah. I'm not saying that there's none, but I've never come in contact with them. But on my mission, it was hard dealing with other missionaries and other members. That's the one place I didn't expect racism on my mission from members and other missionaries. And the crazy thing is, I do have a letter from one missionary who apologized. He said, "You know what? I can't believe how racist I am and how my family is. And then I meet you, and none of that's true. Do you know what I've been taught about you, about your people?" He says, "I feel awful." But he wrote me a letter. He wrote me a letter and apologized on my mission. And I'm so grateful for that. And then to go through different things with members and missionaries and nobody say stop.
What are if you're comfortable sharing, and I know it's probably heavy for you, can you share some of the stories of racism you experienced from missionaries and from members on your mission? And I know it's probably sensitive for you to.
One of these things was on a P-Day at a Pizza Hut. And like I said, the missionary was upset because his sister had a baby with a Black man and it wasn't working out and he was going off. And I remember I was so mad that everybody sat around at this big table we were at and didn't say anything. And so when the waitress came around, she was taking our order on what kind of pizza and drinks we wanted. I remember I told her I wanted a black drink. And she was like, "What?" I said, "A black drink. I don't want Sprite. I don't want water. I want the blackest, darkest drink you have, the darkest cola you have." And I was staring at this missionary the whole time that was saying racist things. And then she was like, "Okay." And so then when we're ordering pizza, and I said, "You know what? I need my own pizza and I want it burnt. I want the white cheese burnt. I want black olives on it. Anything black, I want you to put on my pizza." And I just stared at him and said, "That is enough. There's nothing wrong with black. I am sorry that your sister's having a problem. That doesn't have to do with me or anybody else that looks like me. That is so messed up that you're saying this in front of everyone." No one said anything. That was one instance. Another instance was a few missionaries dressing up, I guess I could say blackface, putting on my makeup, saying that they were Black and, like, "What's up, girl?" and just acting silly. And Then one missionary, and just to preface this, I will never out anybody. And I'll tell anybody that asks me, I will not tell you who they are because I do love them. And I'm friends with some of them this day. As 21-year-old, I guarantee you we didn't know any better. And there are some awareness and some teachings that we've learned since then. But there was an incident where me and another missionary dressed up like slaves, and we had like the red tie bandanas on our head, and we were slaves. And there's a belt around my neck, and she's holding like a noose. She's holding the belt around my neck like this, and I'm playing right along with it.
What was the context of dressing up like that? Was it like P-Day playing around?
It was our P-Day, and I don't know why. I don't know if I suggested or she suggested. I have pictures of it, and I won't share who she is. I don't know why. I don't know why that was okay. Why were we playing like that? Why was I allowing that? Why?
Do you have any memories about what you felt during
just to be accepted? And at that time, as in a Black culture, I know my parents, my father talking to him a lot, you are taught to comply with white people or you can get hurt. You are taught if they're walking towards you, you move out of the way. You are taught that if they speak to you, you cannot not speak to them. They are allowed to touch you. They're allowed to examine you. You are not allowed to say no. Or you can get hurt. And you make them comfortable. You always make them comfortable. If they say you need to dress up like a slave to play and to deal with their racism, then that's what you do.
Well, that's a tough story. Thank you for sharing that with us. I guess I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to be in your shoes of just wanting to fit in. And so if missionaries are saying or doing really racist things, I could even see you wanting to diffuse the tension by even playing along or making jokes yourself sometimes. Is that?
Of course. Yes. Yeah. Like I told you earlier, we are taught to make, as my dad would say, make them comfortable so they don't hurt you. Make them very comfortable. You just smile. And I guess it's what they call a shuck and jive. Yeah, massa, I'll be good. What you want me to do? Right. You just kind of make them comfortable. And you're their, what is it, their gesture or something. You just kind of like, hey, I'm terrible, right? Yeah, you are. See? And everybody's happy. I don't know what that mentality's from, but, I was talking to some friend that's like, when they'll say, hey, Chanel, you see that store? It's funny how they're selling chicken and watermelon in the same place. And you're like, yeah, funny, just things like that. It's like, so if you think those things, why do you need to say them to me? What do you want me to do with that? See, if I get mad, though, I'm an angry Black woman. If I get mad and say, excuse me, that was racist, then I'm a terrible, mean, angry person. But if I just smile and say, oh, you're so funny, that's okay. But they don't realize what they said was harmful. Shouldn't be harmful. It's just a joke.
It's so powerful because at the core of that is survival.
Pretty much.
Like literally life or death. Like that is, it feels like that's the historical, like where it comes from is on a basic level, preservation, like life. Yeah.
If you question, then they feel threatened. Like, oh, so I'm bad? Oh, so I'm terrible. It's a thing I read in a book that was titled with fragility. And if I say, John, that wasn't nice, then instead of saying, oh my gosh, what can I do? I am so sorry. It's more like, oh, so I'm a bad guy? Oh, so I'm evil? And then the tears start. And so people stop focusing on the harm you did to me and focus on your tears, that you are now upset and you feel bad. Mm-hmm. He felt bad. What's the problem? Well, did you not hear what he just said to me? Well, you chose to be offended. It's weird, but that's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of the hardest parts about experiencing racism, either in your ward experiences or on your mission, was that other missionaries kind of didn't call it out or come to your defense.
Not at all. Not at all. And the crazy thing about that particular situation, I had made a video on TikTok and I was talking about that experience when that member kept calling me a coon. And I described my mission companion at the time, very distinct to describe who she was. Well, since the video, I'll say it. I was saying, yeah, my redhead companion just sat there and laughed about it. Well, she saw it. And I don't ever call out anybody. I never use their names, and I try not to use anything that'll identify them. And I'm like, stop outing yourselves, people. But what she said is, she's like, wait a minute, I love you. I'm support. I laughed. I said, yeah, you laughed, and you were like, and she was, haven't heard from her since. Because in another video of mine she saw, she was like, oh, I love you. I'm here for you. Until I said that. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, shut down.
It's like until there's a sense of accountability.
Correct. And I was like, I wanted to know, were you laughing? I said, yeah, were you laughing because you were uncomfortable and you didn't know what to do? Were you laughing because you thought it was funny? I don't know. I'm sitting there next to you going, she's calling me a coon. Yeah. And you're laughing. But it is what it is, right?
So what was it? How were you received as a Black Mormon missionary in the South when you're knocking on doors and attracting out people? Did people double takes? Were they used to it? Did they call you out?
All of the above, because part of it in the Bible Belt, they didn't like Mormons. So I was getting it because I was Mormon. Then I was getting it because I was a woman. Then I was getting it because I was Black. And then I was getting it from the Black people because they're like, what is wrong with you? You know that church is racist. How can you be a part of that? Shame on you. So it was like there was no win. There was no win at all. Mm-mm. Yeah.
So what was it fun? Was it hard? Did you have success? Did you teach people? Did you bring any people into the church?
Sure. There were some people that I cared about a lot. The people that I can remember and cared about a lot was in a small city town in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. And that was a church welfare farm. They had cows and a land, about like 200 something acres of land where they did the welfare farm for the meat. There were some cowboys, some ranchers that were members that were working with us as like missionaries. The town was giving us a hard time, giving us a really hard time about that. But yeah, there was a lot of racism, knocking on doors, a lot of threats. Yeah. It's one thing coming from outside members. I don't know if this is important to know, but it's something significant to know. At that time, the O.J. Simpson trial was going on. Oh. So guess what was happening? People were taking sides on race, and they were pissed off about Black people because this Black man killed this beautiful white woman. And we don't have TVs or email or nothing. So we go knocking on the door and they'd be like, come back later, OJ's on, slam. And we're like, OJ's on? Well, he's a football player. Like, is he playing football again? So then we kept going, and then you'd hear N-word. That N-word killed her, and that N-word this, and that N-word that. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And that was pretty significant on the mission at the time. Is that OJ trial. So if you're trying to knock on doors and there's already tension, and it's racial tension because a Black man killed a white woman, to them, that was really uncomfortable for me.
So being a missionary to white people, when you were attracting white people,
yeah,
there was maybe less reception than even there otherwise would have been.
Oh, yeah. That was harsh.
Did you ever serve in areas with predominantly Black, kind of a predominantly
Once,
Black population?
And it was a military. Oh. It was a military Waynesville, Fort Leonard, Missouri, military. Yes. That was for a short time, but yeah, predominantly mostly Black, very, very diverse. But other than that, no.
So did you ever bring any individuals, Black or white, into the church?
Well, I don't think he ever joined, but I just found his picture the other day. I was laughing. I can't remember his name, but there was a Black man in in Missouri, and they had me talking to him a lot. He wasn't having it. He was like, "Nope, I'm not joining." And I was like, "Come on, I'm here. There are Black people. Come on, you could join." And he was like, "No, but I'll talk to you." And so we tried, and they were sure I was going to be the one to get him in. And he never joined. And then there was there was no other Black people. Nope. Other than that, the people that we taught and got baptized were white.
Okay. So overall, how did you view your mission?
I viewed it yin and yang. It was really, really bad and painful, and it was good. The reason why it was really bad and painful, because I didn't expect the members and the other missionaries to be racist and say racist things and say harmful things, and to go through that. And it was good because I learned a lot, and I learned that you can endure. I learned how to endure very well in that, because I remember I had called the missionary who taught me that the lessons when I got baptized. Like I said, I still talk to him. He's one of the greatest people in the world. I was complaining about some stuff going on in the mission, and he just said, "You got to increase your resolve." That's the best thing I can tell you, is you can't change your circumstances. You can increase your resolve. You can set boundaries, and you'll get through it. And I just have taken that as great advice. But it was hard. It was a very hard mission. I even threatened to go home once. Something was happening with a missionary. At that time, I didn't understand senior and junior companion thing, and made me a senior pretty quickly. And the person was like, "You're not going to be a senior over me." And I was like, "Okay, like, what would you like me to do? I didn't ask for this. Can we just do the work?" And it wasn't happening. And so I told our zone leader, "Hey, this is happening. This is what she's saying. You either take care of it, or I'll call my father. I am 13 hours away. He will come pick me up. I'm not doing this. I've been dealing with a lot. I've been going through the racism. I've been letting people talk trash to me. I'm on my mission. So handle it, or I'm leaving. I'm done. I'm not doing this. This is the last place I expected to have really uncomfortable racist comments and situations with missionaries and members. I was done. Like, at that point I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then he tried to address it. But before, everyone was just telling me to take it and deal with it. And, they kept using a trial of your faith. Some scripture they kept quoting to me of, after a trial of your faith, burn of the fire, something out of a trial of your faith. And I was like, okay, my faith is tried. I don't want to do this anymore. So.
Did you feel like you had a good relationship with your mission president?
Mission president we had 3.
Oh.
Because one was supposed to come in and got sick, and then the other one wasn't ready. We had 3. The first one was my favorite. The intermediate one, neutral, indifferent, nothing profound, remarkable or not. And the last one, he was interesting. I don't really know what to say. Yeah, I like my first one. I'll just say that. Okay. I loved the first one. I thought he was great.
All right. So you finished your mission and came back home. What did you leave your mission wanting to do next as in your Mormon journey? What were your plans as you were finishing the mission?
I just wanted to go to school. Education was important to me. I just really wanted a degree. I really wanted schooling. And I wanted to go to BYU. And they discouraged me from that and said, try Rexburg. Well, I don't remember what happened with that and why I didn't get into that. But something had happened, but I felt I had to go to a Mormon school because a Mormon school would, first of all, put me around other Mormons and would also put me around the possibility of finding other Black Mormons is what they told me. So you're not going to typically find Black Mormons in just other cities, but you will find them at the schools because from different cities and states, they will come to the school. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, you need to find a Black man, okay? And I was like, okay. And so they said, you need to go to a school where you can find other Black Mormons. And I said, okay.
What'd you do?
I don't remember why it didn't work out, but it didn't work out.
Okay.
And I really don't remember. I know BYU didn't work out because they just said they didn't think that would be a good fit for me. I don't know why, but they said, don't do BYU, try Rexburg. And I'm following my leaders. I don't know the difference between BYU and Rexburg. I don't think I even had heard about BYU growing up, ever, much less Mormons. So I get home, trying to get into school. Then I just start working. Then they said, you know what? We think it's best that you get married. You know, you're already older. You've served the mission. You're a great candidate for marriage, but you need to find a Black man. And I remember kept asking, where am I supposed to find a Black man? And they're like, it doesn't matter. You find a Black man, convert him, or go to an area where there's predominantly Black people in the wards. And then I said, so I'm supposed to move out of state. Which one? Which one? And that's when I started to get testy. I was like, which one? Which one would you like me to move to? Because I don't know. I was getting irritated. And they're like, that we don't know, but that's what you need to do. And I'm like, so what are you saying? I started putting my thumb. What are you saying? When you say I need to go find a Black man, I need to move out of state to find a Black man, why is that? And they're like, well, sister, is just what? I need you to say it, say it. So Black people and white people aren't supposed to mix? They're like, no, they're not. And I said, is there a reason why? Yes, because your seed is cursed. If your seed mixes with their seed, then your children, your husband won't be cursed, but your children will be. You want that? You want that for your family? And I was like, well, no. I said, well, this is why it's not supposed to happen. So 2 Black people, we're just going to stay cursed. So you want me to find a Black man so I can be cursed with him and so our kids can be cursed. Got it. Okay. I'll work on that. And I was just irritated. By then I was kind of like starting to get bitter, started to get just like, what the heck? So then after my mission, here's a beautiful thing that happened. This is the only reason I can say I love my parents. So don't misunderstand. But I think this is what saved me from really losing and just going off on the church is after my mission, there was an area in my mission where there was a woman in the ward who we were at a dinner appointment. And she said, hey, after your mission, would you like to come live with us? And I was like, nope. And then as I got to know her, I don't know what it was. Something said to do it. By then I was bitter. After my mission, I was tired of all the racism. I lived with her and her family. She was a white woman. She was married to a Filipino man. I feel bad for saying this because I don't want anybody else to think that I don't care for them and maybe I misunderstood. I knew for a fact she loved me. She really did. She wasn't doing it to get anything. She wasn't, and I think she had gone through her own stuff with people being racist to her because of her Filipino husband. But she was the only person that I truly feel tried everything she could to get it. My mom loves her. My parents loved her. They talked about a few other people, but this was the person that they loved because they knew I was so angry and so bitter. And she kept telling me that I was worth it. She kept saying, do not listen to them. I don't care what they say. And I know they were saying stuff to her. You have that Black person living in your house. She's going to steal. She's going to do this. Because it would get back to me. She didn't care. And they were grilling her pretty hard. You got to be careful. She's going to try to go after your sons. You know, whatever. And she was like, no. She treated me so good. And I remember this is what changed things for me. And then I really tried to make it work. there was a Christmas at her house, and she asked me some things I wanted for Christmas, and I was mean. I was like, "What, you gonna get it for me?" And she was like, "Chanel, what is it that you would like?" I said, "Okay." She goes, "Just give me some list about some things you like." So I was being a jerk. I just wrote down 33 things, just being a jerk, because I was so mad because some of the people around the neighborhood, they're being racist. They would say things. Their kids would say things, and I'd take it. And she got me everything I asked for and then some. And I just was softened because she's like, "I don't care about your skin. I don't care anything about it." And the thing that she did for me to keep me from wanting to die is she said, after my mission, remember I told you that dancing is a big deal in our culture. While everybody else was trying to mold me and make me something in this area in Fort Lindenwood where the Black people were, my last area of my mission, there were some Black women that were teasing me. They were like, "You're a Mormon?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "You don't dance?" And I was like, "We're missionaries. We don't do that." And they're like, "You don't know what the Tootsie Roll is or the butterfly?" And I was like, "No." And so they did the dance in front of me. And I was like, "Is that what you guys are doing now?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I can't do that. I'm a missionary. I can't dance." And they're like, "Do it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not doing it." I said, "I have a month left. I'll go home and I'll do it then." So I get home and I go to a party. My family's all there, my cousins, my aunties, my uncles, and they're all doing this dance, my brother. And they were laughing at me because I was like, "I don't know how to do that." They're like, "You're so boring. You've been on this mission. You ain't learned anything." And I didn't want to do this dance. I didn't want to try it. So I tried it and they laughed, and it was a funny thing. But when I went back to live with her after my mission, I was telling her this story and she said, "Well, show it to me." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Show me this dance." And I was like, "But it might be sensual, or it might be," she was like, "Just show it to me." And so I performed the dance for her, and the way she was looking at me, she didn't care. She loves me to this day. She doesn't care. I know it's hard for her that I left the church. But why couldn't everybody else try to understand? Why couldn't everybody else say, "Hey, let me listen"? Because the other ones were telling me, "There's no racism. You're over exaggerating. You're making a big deal." And she says, "It's here. Okay. But I am here." And I was so mean sometimes because I was just tired of it. She never tried to mold me into anything but me. And I guarantee you several times the things that I said and did were so painful for her, especially me leaving. She talks to me now. She shows a lot of love for me. And Jehovah's Witnesses believe only 144,000 will go. And if that's true, it's going to be her. She's going to be one of them, because she just tries to understand racism. She tries to understand. She doesn't always understand, but she can empathize because it happened to her family. She can teach her children. These kids, their cousins weren't like them, racist as hell. But these kids in her home never said a racist thing to me, never said a microaggression, never made me feel like I was less. To them, I was royalty always and today. She like, why can't everybody be like her? Why can't they just be like, "You're human, that's enough"? Why can't me loving people be enough? Why? And I have to say, it's their teachings. Like, people don't really just think people are that disgusting just because of their skin. And then I think all of the things that the church has been teaching, it's horrible. And for the members that don't know about this and the members that don't know this doctrine, it's horrible. It's really, really bad.
Which teaching specifically?
The teachings that Black people are cursed, that Black people are marked, and that we did really horrible things in a pre-existence. And that's why we deserve to be hurt by police. That's why we deserve anything that we have. And that's why we are wicked, terrible, looting people, is because of our choices. And that the Spirit is withdrawn from us because of who we are.
So it's not just the racist teachings that are racist in and of themselves. You're saying some of the Mormons, use those racist teachings to either justify or feel good about or even perpetuate bad behavior?
Horrible behavior, because to the thing, I think that was the first time that I felt I was broken. Not that first guy that was holding my hand, telling me to me, I don't know why that was funny. I think it was his face. He was like, I need to go find a white Chanel. Okay. Love you. And then he was gone. But this other one, I think broke me for the simple fact the situation was like for 2 years. And I remember he was always like we didn't fight. We never had disagreements. If we disagree about something, it was never like you see people having these blowout fights. It was never like that. Anytime we disagreed, it was always respectful, with kindness, I was a single mom. He helped me with vehicles. He helped me. Do you need something? What do your kids need? He was wonderful. He came to my house. We went to Institute together. We went to church. I mean, it was just great. He even visited with me to the Genesis group. He went with me to one of those because he was trying to understand. He was so racist. But he was trying. I could tell he was trying, and I can see how badly he fought within himself to get over it, because he would get mad at himself about me, that if he liked me. And I remember he would get frustrated and be like, I'm not supposed to like black people. My family said if I ever dated or married a black person, they would kill me. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And I was like, dude, what do you mean it's wrong? And he was like, this situation is wrong. Like, black people are not supposed to mix. You understand that. You know the doctrine. You know what the church teaches. And I was like, but here you are. So I'm kind of confused. So this went on for like 2 years, and I thought it was great, but it really wasn't, until the day he came over, and he was kind of irritable. And I was like, what's up? And he's like, we need to talk. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, give me your scriptures. I give him my scriptures. He opens up to 2 Nephi 5:21, and he reads it. And he reads it like with the mad face. And then he looks at me like, do you understand? Do you get it? We can't mix, no matter what we think or what we feel. This is wrong. We're going to be damned. Our children are going to be damned. We're going to be hurt. Our families are going to be hurt. This can't work. And I was like, so the whole time you knew I was black. It's not like I just surprised you with it. I've been black the whole time, and you're just now figuring out that you can't mix. Got it. He was like, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. And I was reading my journal, which is so painful to read, because on a pretty consistent basis, me thinking how great it wasn't all that great, because he would get mad at himself and say, I'm not attracted to you. I can't be attracted to you. I am not attracted to you. And I'm taking this. These are like slaps to my face. But I'm taking it because I'm like, he can't mean that because he's here. But he wouldn't hold my hand, though. He would freak out. He was just like he wanted to throw up because of the color of my hand. I remember, like, I couldn't take that now. Oh my gosh. But I did. I just wanted his acceptance so bad. He wasn't all that either. But to me, to just be told I was so gross because of my skin, and to see how mad he was at himself and how disappointed at himself that he could like a black woman was so disgusting to him. It was. And so the nail on the coffin for that is I was devastated. He's like, so we're done. It's done. And he left. I called my home teacher, was upset. Home teacher came over, gave me a blessing. I still was not taking that well. So I thought, I got to go talk to my bishop, because if my bishop can say that he's misunderstanding, then my bishop can tell him he's misunderstanding that scripture. I go to my bishop, and again, another person's angry. He was so just like grossed out by me even asking. I remember I asked him, I said, Bishop, I am dating a young man who's saying we can't date, we can't marry. And the bishop was like, okay, like, what's wrong? Like, he thought maybe we had a sexual sin or something. I said, well, he's white, and right when I said that, that bishop just was like put off. And I was like, well, we've been, seeing each other for like 2 years and this and this. And he was just like, hey, stop. He's like, Utah is not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. The church is not ready for this. He said, Utah is not ready for this. And I said, ready for what? He said, interracial marriage. This is not a good thing. So he's a priesthood holder and he is correct. You're not supposed to mix. And I was like, okay, so we go to Institute together. We don't commit any sexual sins. We are good friends. My kids love him. Seriously? And the bishop he was like sinking in his chair and he was like full of contempt and disdain. He was just like, okay, I already told you. I don't know what more you need me to tell you. So I just went home and I think I cried about that for months. It was just because I can't change my skin. Like, I don't, you think I asked for this in the former life? I don't see how I could have asked for this. There's no way in hell I would ask for this so that I can then pass this on to my kids to think that their skin is gross, to think that their skin is disgusting and cursed and marked, and that everything bad happens to them is because of their pre-existent choices. That's evident in their skin color today, that determines their worth and their value and their attitudes on life because of before. The reason why you're looters and welfare recipients and these horrible, terrible people is because you did not choose God and the pre-existence, and you didn't even have the courage to make a choice at all. You didn't even choose Satan. That is what we're taught.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing.
It feels so, I don't know, it just feels so intense that on some level, you live in an environment, a world, a culture, and that's one thing. You're absorbing kind of messaging around race in America, right? But then you kind of make this attempt at safety, attempt at hope, attempt at by, joining this religion. And it is just, I'm just so sorry for your experience that in this place where you're face to face with people, you have a relationship with people, you're, showing up and repeatedly you are feeling like such violent things from human beings, It's just, I'm just so sorry for that.
I think people don't get it because they can't relate. It's not relatable to everybody. And I think the thing that they can relate to is money. Imagine that maybe, because remember I said in the beginning, I felt loved and valued. And I thought that I was receiving all this love and sweetness, and then it turned into, it's like you marry this man that's showing you the world and then he starts beating you later. That's what it was like. It got worse. But it's like, so imagine you're children. It's 3 siblings, okay? You all are talking all the time and you talk about your parents and everybody's happy. And then 10 years later, you find out that your parents have secretly been giving the 2 children $50,000 a year, not giving you any, and celebrating those children that are getting the $50,000 because they're doing great, they're buying things. They haven't given you anything and you're busting your ass, you're doing everything right. But they've had a little bit of extra help that you didn't know about. So you're thinking it's all just you. And how are they, man, I'm working the same and just as hard as them. Why are they getting these things and I'm not? And so then you find out at year after year after year, these 2 siblings have been getting $50,000 and you've not getting anything. Not that you deserve it, but just that not only are they giving it to them to help them prosper, they are now making fun of you because you're not prospering, but you don't know that they've been given that to them to help them do better. And they're like, well, you suck, Jenny has a $1 million house and you only have a $100,000 house. I mean, what's your problem? And you're like, yeah, what is my problem? Jenny and Jake, man, they're doing great. And we work at the same job. Like, what am I doing wrong? I've got to figure it out. And then you keep trying harder and harder and harder. But they keep getting this money that you don't know about to help them. That's what it feels like. It's like you're doing everything you can. You're reading your scriptures. You're going to the temple. You're avoiding all your friends that could be naughty or bad or apostate just because you're trying so hard. And it will never be good enough because they're receiving help and because they're praising them with that to make them think that they are better. And you're sitting here going, what could I possibly do to be better? I don't know any more to do. And then you ask them, is there something I can do? And they're like, nope, you just suck. And you're like, yeah, I do. I do suck. And that's what it's like.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, me too. I can't believe I let it go so long.
So after, I guess you went many years after your mission before you got married. Is that right?
Yeah, so I got home. See, my mission was 93 to 95. I got married in 1998.
And did you end up marrying a Mormon guy?
Maybe.
Anything you want to say about that first marriage?
Yes, and it's already out there, so I don't have a problem commenting on it. Everybody already knows about it.
Let me was dating prior to marriage super hard? Like
very hard.
So if you're in San Antonio while you're dating as a returned missionary, you're an adult, you're not supposed to have sex, but it's probably hard to find Mormon guys. So what was that like, either dating or not dating as a returned missionary?
Just didn't date because it wasn't from a lack of trying. It was you're cursed. It was, we can't mix with you. It was, Chanel, it's just not going to happen. Like,
these are like singles wards.
Oh yeah.
San Antonio.
And singles wards in San Antonio, singles wards here in Utah. I even taught celestial marriage, knowing I'm not getting married. Yeah. I taught that
before your first marriage.
Before my first marriage.
Okay. You came to Utah before your first marriage?
Uh-huh. I got married here.
Oh, okay. So what brought you from San Antonio to Utah?
So I went to that lady and lived with her in Missouri. And that was wonderful. She was amazing, absolutely amazing, her and her children. And then from there, I came to Utah specifically for massage school, for Utah College of Massage Therapy, because of my mission companion had told me that Utah had the best one in the nation. And they did. I researched it and I was like, okay, I'll come to Utah. And so her family was here. She was here. And so I came to Utah, went to school, did massage. But I was trying to date then too, but it just wasn't. And the weird thing is there was a guy I was seeing I did have one boyfriend and I lived with his family for a short time because the family I was living with, the girl, she wasn't doing very well. She was trying to control me and telling me, you need to be home when I get home. I want to see you. And if you're not here when I get home, I'm going to throw your clothes on the lawn. I was like, whatever. So I went and lived with my boyfriend and his family. Interesting. He was fine. He didn't care about race. They kind of did. And there was a lot of microaggressions and a lot of things.
This is a white family?
The white family. But they weren't cruel. It was just ignorance and cluelessness. Just some of the things they said. But I could see that they saw me for me and they're like, you know what? She's fine. So we can be nice to her. And that's what I got. And they were good. The microaggressions happened a lot, but they were good. Like they weren't saying anything to my face. Like I never felt, I knew they thought stuff and I knew the surrounding people thought stuff, but they never made me feel unsafe.
What are some examples of when you're talking about microaggressions?
Like things like, well, you know how Black people are. Okay, how are they? Or, so is it true that black people, things like, so is it true like black people like watermelon and chicken and, stuff like that? Just like small little things where, well, I like it. I like watermelon. I like chicken, but I don't like them together. And well, what about this? Or so, I mean, just like things, or about my hair, how come you don't have an afro? Don't black people have afros? And braids are like rope. And you just like small things like that. Yeah. Nothing overtly white supremacy or...
just like, where are you from?
Yeah, nothing. They never said the N-word, nothing like that. It was more just like microaggressions, like things like, well, black men can jump, or, just stuff like that. Jabs like that. Or, teasing him, is it different kissing a black girl than it is? Because they got fuller lips and, just stupid things like that. Dumb things.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
So, and that was just for part course, people would say things like that. And I was like, yeah, okay. But then things were starting not to work out. It was getting really weird with him, but it wasn't because I was black. With him, he was bipolar and he was struggling bad. And so one minute he'd be fine. And so that was starting to die down. And I was at the singles ward. So there was other people I started to meet. And there was this one guy that I really liked a lot. And he knew I liked him back. And throughout my friendships, they would never, ever claim we were dating. Even though we were dating, but they would never say, you're my girlfriend. But we'd go to movies, we'd hang out, we'd do things, but they would refuse to say I was their girlfriend.
So it was like hiding.
Yeah, and it was always, I'm going to find something better. It was always like, hey, you're cool. I remember this one guy, he's like, you're cool, but I'm holding out. You're fine. We can hang out. We can be friends, but I'm going to marry a white girl. This is why. We have to have white children. They have to be blonde hair, blue eyes, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, whatever. It's so funny because 4 years later, he tried to contact me and I laughed. And I was like, dude, no, go away. But that's how it was. It was like these men. And then there was another one that was a lot older than me. And his thing was weird. His was a conquest thing. He said, I think I was 25 and I think he was like 40, maybe 37, 40. And he said, he was looking at me weird. And I finally looked up at him. I was like, you good? And he was like, I heard you black women are exotic. I was like, exotic? He's like a panther, like a leopard. And I was like, ew, what? And then I started laughing because I'm like, okay, so he's joking. And he's like, no, he's like, I think I need to try some chocolate. And I was like, wait, is he propositioning me? Like, ew. I was like, that's what you do. No, he was like, we're not going to date, but I heard that you guys are, they say bangles. I heard you guys are bangles in bed. And I was like, oh my gosh. I called my girlfriend. I was like, do you know what he said? Yeah. So for him, it was like some weird fetish, creepy thing. Like, I heard you guys are bangles. And he was like, rawr. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is so weird. But it was that. And I remember him saying, remember, we're not going to date, but I just want some chocolate. I want to try some chocolate. And I was like, oh, that is not a turn on. That is just really creepy, weird. It's going to put me in the basement like on Criminal Minds or something. It was just weird. And so I didn't talk to him anymore. It was just too bizarre. So it's like stuff like that. So it's either like fetish sizing kind of creepy sexual stuff with no commitment, or it was them mad at themselves, like they had disappointed God in themselves for even possibly considering a black woman.
Yeah.
That was so offensive because the one guy I told you was like, when I was reading my journal, either I imagined it or it happened, but he was like hitting himself. This is wrong. I just can't be attracted to you. It was like punishing himself. And that was offensive. That was so offensive. But I was like, he's nice. He treats me good, I think. But he was mad at himself. Can
I ask you a question during this time? So we kind of have from 18 until now we're at kind of 25, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it feels like you are repeatedly having experiences where you are told on some level you're depraved, you're not good enough, you're not like a version people want, you're not white, you're not whatever. All these, it just feels like you're having these compounded experiences with other human beings during this time. Did you have any relationships during this time where people were like just celebrating you, like just literally seeing, it sounds like the one woman you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Right? But like anyone else during this time, friends, people that honestly could just like shine a light on your already whole and glorious self, like as you are.
You kind of mean in Utah, right?
Yeah, I'm just kind of saying actually from 18 to 20, like the minute she's like repeatedly getting these messages, particularly in the church, because this is the community and the system that she's in, that are just, it's like a browbeating. It's like always coming up just on so many levels, violent, overt, covert, just all the things, you know? Did you have anyone, because I'm just feeling like a bit of the psychological impact of what it would be like to just have that day in, day out. Like that is what you're getting from people. You're not being seen. It's all like a projection of these people, you know, in this horrible way. So did you have any, I don't know, friends or in your immediate sphere that were able to really see you? Because it sounds like incredibly wounding.
I thought so. And then the truth comes out and it's crushing. I wish I didn't know. To be honest, I wish I didn't know. So at that time, there was a few friends that were cousins of some of these people that I hung out with, and she was Latina. So I thought, oh my gosh, she loves me. We hung out. It was great. She married a white guy who was ultra conservative, far right, and things started getting really weird. And her brother, oh my gosh. I remember I asked him, this was still right after my mission, and I was trying to hang out with the single adults. He was saying that so-and-so was attractive and so-and-so was attractive. Oh gosh, stupid me. But I remember I asked him, I'm like, do you think I'm attractive? And I remember his face. He was like, well, you're not unattractive. And I was like, okay. And he was Hispanic, and all the women that he liked were white women. He was showing me the girls in the ward that he liked. The other one that was telling me that we can hang out but not be boyfriend and girlfriend was one also was explaining about the blonde hair, blue eye. So no, it wasn't being celebrated. And then some of the girlfriends I had, we hung out and we had fun. I mean, we had fun. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Oh my gosh, I forgot about like, what is so wrong with me? I wish they could have said, you're too fat, you stink, you're ugly. It was skin all the time. This one, we were really, really close. And I think we're like best friends, but I did have a crush on him. And I think I misunderstood some stuff going on between us. And so I told that lady that I said treated me well. And she told the aunt of this guy. Because I really thought maybe, you know, him and I were going to get together. And he flipped out. And before that, him and I were like this. He flipped out. And he's like, did you tell so-and-so that we're getting married? And I was like, no. And he was like, look. And I was like, first of all, I never said anything like that. I said that I liked you. And he was like, no, listen. And I had forgotten about that. this thing with race, and his aunt was the person who had told me a couple of years ago, there's no racism. You guys are misunderstanding things. You're over exaggerating. You're offended because you want to be offended. There is no racism. I'm telling you, you're misunderstanding. And then other people within that community that I was in was also telling me stuff like, well, Black people, you know, you have to understand Democrats, liberals are all Marxists, you know, and I'm just like, so none of you guys are understanding me. Nobody's celebrating me. Nobody's celebrating Black people because Black people are less. Black people are worse. They're bad. They're looters. That's what I kept hearing. They're looters. Even though everybody else was littering. And the other friend, all these people I'm thinking are my friends. It was like, there's a movie I watched. It's called Lovebirds. There's a scene where they're in this room and everybody has masks on. Everybody has masks on and like sheets or robes or whatever. And they're trying to find out the two people that shouldn't be there. And so they say, okay, on a count of 3, I'm going to have you remove your mask. And so they count to 3 and just this couple removes their mask and everybody's in mask. The point of that is that they kind of outed them, but not themselves. And I feel like people started outing themselves, people I felt comfortable with, people that were in the room when I had my babies, that were that intimate with me, were now removing their hoods, mask or whatever, and they did not care. And was like, 2016 was awful because now everybody that I was friends with in that time, right after my mission, now was showing me that they are very racist. And racism is different than white supremacy. Racism is soft compared to white supremacy. Now these people that I was comfortable with in this room are now showing themselves as white supremacists, saying that Black people, that I need to start listening to Candace Owens, that I need to not be liberal, that I've changed, that I'm an awful person, that I'm bad, that I'm wicked. Kamala Harris is wicked. All Black women are wicked. Look at Michelle Obama. Black women are masculine. They look like men. All these people that I let my guard down with and told them everything about me are now the people I shouldn't have trusted. Now I'm knowing what they really think about Black women. They're not even talking about Black men. These women, these girls that I thought were celebrating me were not celebrating me. They were celebrating what I could do to make the church look amazing. This Black woman thinks the church is great, while every other Black person is saying the church is racist. No, it is not, because Chanel says it's great. Now are revealing themselves. That was probably the most scariest time, because how could I have been that comfortable that whole time knowing they felt this way for years? Wow. That was eye-opening. That was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
No, I didn't feel celebrated at all. Yeah. Unless I gave a good talk. The only time I got patted on the back or told I was amazing is when I did missionary work or when I gave a talk.
Right.
That's it.
Kind of when you fell in line, or
if I was quiet, if I sang, because I sing, and if I sang a hymn, if I sang a ensemble, it was a church song, then I was great. They thought I was great. If I came with them, the missionaries, or I held the missionaries over for dinner, I was great. But if I was anything of Chanel, no. Playing cards is evil. Dancing is evil. You're too loud. Your hair is too much. You need more neutral color, natural color hair. Your nails are too long. Prostitutes have long red nails. Red lipstick is for whores. I mean, harlots. Oh, I remember that was the one, harlot. Jezebel. That's because I usually have long nails, and I usually have color nails like blue and green and red and bright pink and yellow. And I usually have blue hair and blonde hair. And they're like, no, you need to be more natural. That is not virtuous. That is not lovely of good report. No, don't feel celebrated at all.
I keep saying it, but I keep wanting to say I'm so sorry.
And I did endure it. I'm just tired of it.
But enduring too, you take a hit, right?
I was taking lots of it.
Psychologically, I would imagine, physically, how it plays out on physical health, stress, and...
Where was I going to go, though? They made it very clear. Where are you going to go? You don't have your family anymore. You don't have any of your friends. If you leave here, what community will you have? Where will you go? That was a big... It was like it was a Mormon ad or something. Where will you go? Really? Are we really that bad? Just because a couple of people are racist? I was like, they're right. Where am I going to go? If I leave this church, I will lose all community and all support. If I take my name off the records, if I walk away, who will be the support of my children?
In part 2, we're going to come to kind of your, let's just say, faith crisis and kind of
the walking away,
leaving the church. But before we get there, so you have had a few children, and you've been married. You've had at least one Mormon marriage. Is that right? Do you want to talk anything about your marriages or children?
Yeah, I don't mind talking about that. He was supposed to be a member. He hadn't told me that he wasn't a member. He had been next to me.
Sorry, can I ask you one quick question
Sure.
before that? I'm sorry. I just spaced it for a second. I would think, given the way Utah and Mormons work, that if a black woman who's a convert or a black man who's a convert comes to Utah and wants to get married, but there's this kind of underlying or even explicit or overt no interracial marriage, that they would have like wards or groups or clubs, some way for single black Mormons to meet each other, to find each other, and to get married. Now, maybe there's just not enough of them to even have a club.
Correct. They had Genesis group.
So did you go to Genesis group as a single?
I did, and it was not it was. I don't even know
maybe tell people what you know about Genesis group.
Yeah, I don't even know what that was. I went with that guy who broke up with me and told me that he couldn't marry me and read me scripture. He went with me.
White guy.
The white guy. He went with me because we were like, he's like, let's take the kids. Let's try to figure. He was trying. I know he was trying.
So maybe I'll try, and you tell me if this sounds right. That for many, many years, maybe even pre-1978, there would be people like Darius Gray, people who were black Mormons who wanted fellowship. They wanted a community of other black Latter-day Saints. And so they formed this group called the Genesis group, which the best I can think of it is as a support group for black Mormons that don't have any other black friends, or that
Correct.
are just looking for support for how hard it is to be black in Utah or to be a black Mormon in Utah. But they would meet weekly. Is that right?
Once a month.
Once a month.
It's like once a month, like on a Saturday or Sunday. I don't remember. I went once and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. It was just.
Okay.
It's like the best way I can describe that is like if you. Okay, so whatever culture, not even white, but just like whatever culture you're in, and now you're being, let's say that your culture is to bake. All you guys do is bake. You've been taught to bake, and now you're in a group that thinks baking is weird and strange. You're not going to be comfortable in that group. I'm a black woman. Just because I'm black, it doesn't mean I could relate to these people because I'm not around them. Who am I around? Who's molded me since I was 18? White women.
Oh.
I'm white. White culture, anything about Mormonism and white. I don't play cards anymore. I don't dance. I don't do any of that. So now I'm supposed to relate to these people I don't know. So now they're like, just go over there. Go to your people. I don't know my people. That's like if you drop me off in Ghana right now and say, good luck, you're with your people. We might look the same. We're nothing alike.
Right.
That's what they did. They didn't want to deal with it because I remember the bishop, he was like, couple of years ago, he's like, there is a black bishop. Wow, do you want a cookie? What does that do? The black bishop's married to a white woman. He's like, I understand. He doesn't do anything culturally black. So how could he relate to me just because of his skin color?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they think it does.
So much sense. Yep.
So they'd kind of taken your culture away from you when you joined
Absolutely.
the church.
Easy. Stripped it and told me it was bad.
So they're saying, be white, be white, be white. But then when you come to Utah, no one wants to marry you. It almost feels like a cultural ghetto to create a group like the Genesis group and say, we'll just go there.
I thought that was terrible. I didn't think that was a flex they thought it was. Why can't you? Okay, so you can integrate Polynesian culture, Hispanic culture, every other culture, Hawaii, but you can't integrate black culture in anything? That made no sense to me.
That's such a good point.
Y'all go to your building. Everybody else is integrated. Look at the big Polynesian culture is huge.
Yeah.
They engulf that in culture halls and stuff. What about black people? They won't do it. Even Hispanic. Any places I've been,
Wow.
not black.
Yeah. Like we sent missionaries to Tonga and Samoa, Hawaii, like really early on. And like almost most of the islands all converted.
Yeah.
But like we were intentionally not sending missionaries to Africa because we didn't want black members because 1, they were cursed, 2, we were racist, and 3, they couldn't really get the priesthood or really
Exactly.
lead in the church. So we just have over a century of just like, we don't even know
So
what to do
you
with those
guys go
people.
play over there and we'll talk to y'all later.
So there'd be,
And we're the ones that created that.
yeah.
Like we created the structure where they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then didn't. Yeah.
Didn't it go? Yeah. So, and then there's just the whole racism, just generally in the United States,
Oh yeah.
you know, fear and suspicion and, you know, that makes a kid running around in a hoodie get shot just because he's running around in a hoodie
Exactly.
and he's got the wrong skin color.
Yeah.
So like, how do you, if you're white Mormons, Republican in Utah, how do you integrate this culture into your white Utah culture, which is kind of whitest of white almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm speaking, John. Just awareness, because there's too many now that are so scared because they want to integrate. They don't know how. So if I don't talk about this, they don't know. You think that girl thought it was cruel and horrible to put a belt around my neck like a noose? No, that's why she did it. But if I talk about that, yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's painful. But then people learn why it's wrong, why it's harmful, why blackface is harmful, instead of justifying it.
So they end up, I guess you end up finding someone to marry, miracle of miracles in
Ooh.
Utah. I guess I say that tongue in cheek.
Well, the thing about it is, how it came about was a white person came to me from a single adult roster and said, "Hey, I'm your visiting teacher." And she stares at me and says, "Oh my gosh, you would be perfect for my friend."
Because
You're black and he's black.
Because I know one other black person.
I said, "You know a black Mormon?" She's like, "Oh yeah. He was a companion of my husband." And I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." "Oh my gosh, you're pretty. You would be perfect for him." Why would I be perfect for him and not her brother?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I be perfect? Her brother's a redhead. I like redheads. My husband's a redhead. Seriously, why wasn't I perfect for her brother, but I was perfect for this black man that she didn't know if we got along or would like each other? Why was I perfect for him? Why not her husband's friends or her friends? Why him? Because you're black and he's black. Perfect match. So intrigued, I'm like, a black Mormon? Besides me, and it's a male? I'll talk to him.
so you hadn't really dated a black Mormon up until that
I
point?
never dated a black Mormon.
Whoa, in
Ever.
7, 8, 9 years?
Never.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's why I was like, ooh, okay. I'll talk to him. Well, he was in Missouri, so we talked over the phone. She sent me a picture of him. He wouldn't send me a picture of him, but she had an old picture of him. And I was like, it's okay. And so we started talking. And then they flew him down. Either he flew down. I don't remember, but I knew he was coming. I told my girlfriends, hey, he's coming down. They're like, cool, we'll come over. We'll meet him. So it was my best friend at the time and her husband and her kids. And we're like, okay, he's going to come. So he comes over and instantly I'm like, That's a no. There was something about his demeanor that just shut me down. And I was like, this is a friend zone thing. We're friends. We're going to be friends. I liked him I could tell that this was not going to be a connection. He came in, he was loud, he was rowdy, which didn't bother me because I'm a loud, wild person. And my friend looks at me, I look at her, and we just shake our head. But I said, okay, I'm going to be nice. It was just something. And so we go to dinner, everything's fine. I'm just like, I don't know, just something off. So anyway, we're still dating, we're still talking, still kind of going on. I'm talking to her who introduced us, met her husband. And so now it's forced on me because I like them. I thought this girl was nice, and her husband. And then I met another friend of his. And so they all were kind of pushing me on him. You're pretty, be with him. You're black, be with him. And I was like, I don't want to be with him. And they're like, oh, no. You're misunderstanding. You guys are perfect for each other. You're perfect for each other. You're perfect for each other. What makes us perfect? So then I started talking to my branch president. I was like, I'm not feeling this. I was like hyperventilating. I'm like, this is not working. He goes, sister. And I'm like, what? He goes, are you reading your scriptures? I'm like, yes. He starts going through the questions. Are you going to the temple? Are you paying your tithing? I'm like, yes. He's like, then what's the problem? Any two Mormons can make it, especially two of the same race. Two black people that are Mormon, why wouldn't they make it? They are the perfect couple. Why would we be perfect? So I was like, but I'm not feeling it. And he's like, what is it that you're not feeling? And I'm like, something's off about this situation. I think he's nice, and I think we'd be great friends. I think we would be absolutely fantastic. I'm not feeling. And he was like, okay, you need to go home and read your scriptures. Do you not trust your priesthood holders? And I was like, I do. He says, we feel that this would be perfect. Okay. Is he hurting you? No. Is he beating you? No. Is he trying to make you do something you don't want to do? I'm like, no. He goes, then what's the problem? What's the problem? And I'm like, it is me. Oh my gosh.
Just like when you went to the temple.
I was going to say, it comes back around again.
It was me, because they're right. I was reading my scriptures. He didn't hit me. He wasn't awful to me. He didn't say mean things. So it's me. And I was like, you're right. I'll pray about it. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. Maybe, And so I started talking myself into it. And the more and more I get around him, I'm like, something is off. Something is not. Long story short, no, he was not even a member. Not anymore. And he hadn't told me that.
He had been a member before.
He had been a member.
Okay.
But see, they didn't check. They just assumed he was perfect for me because of what he looked like. He's black. So there's no reason why.
Black guy.
So whatever I was feeling here, even though I was doing all those things, was my bad.
So you married him?
So we got married.
In the temple, or?
No. Oh my gosh. No, we couldn't get married in the temple because he told me that so there's temple questions. And one of the questions was something of this, do you associate or empathize with any other religion or any other church or something like that?
Right.
He said they took away his temple recommend because he had spoken at a reorganized religions ward because he was friends with them. And his bishop found out, and they took his temple recommend for that reason.
Like an RLDS church?
Yes, reorganized church. So I told the bishop that, thinking maybe they can do something, because there wasn't a sin. It was just, maybe a misstep on his part. And they said, no, that sounds about right. He shouldn't have been giving talks in their ward. So I'll tell you what, get married now, and in a year, go to the temple. I was like, well, you have to get married in the temple first. You said never to get married, don't get married civilly first. You have to go to the temple. I'm worthy. I tried to reserve the Jordan River temple, and they're like, no, just get married now. And, because you guys are good. You don't want to wait that time. I was like, but everybody else is getting married in the temple, and I'm worthy. I can get married in the temple. I want to get married in the temple. They're like, sister, just marry him. And then later on you can just, we'll go. So it's okay for everybody else to get married in the temple, but me, I'm the one that has to sacrifice and just do this thing, even though
aim lower.
Yeah. I was like, okay. So I'm telling him, I don't feel good about this. So then next thing I know, we're at a culture hall. He proposes to me in front of everybody, all these people that think we should be together that knew about it but me. So what am I doing? I'm just like, yeah, Okay, I take this ring and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't know what's going on. I feel weird. I like him, but I don't feel good about this. And we, start planning this wedding. His family can't come. My family's not going to come. So we just go to the courthouse. We get married. But then we have this beautiful, huge reception. These wonderful members got it together. They were great. They all stepped up. All the Relief Society women. I mean, they were great. They were. And I'm thinking, what the hell have I done here? So,
yeah, can I ask if this analogy is coming to my mind, and it may be totally off, but I just want to offer it. Did you ever see the movie Get Out?
of course I did.
Remember, like the big rich white family, and then the people of color in their lives.
Yep.
And it, like, what would it be like to be surrounded by all these wealthy, powerful white people, and you're trying to fit in?
Yep.
And they all kind of act like they know what's best for you.
Yep.
And you almost are just going to do whatever they say because they're rich and powerful and they're the in culture, and you just want to fit in.
Who else are you going to fit in with? I've been cut off now from any other culture. I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm unrecognizable to my girlfriend that I've been friends with 40-something years, since young, because she's like, and then they treated her bad when she came out. When she came out for our wedding to this man, she was my maid of honor. She came out with her boyfriend. We were talking about this probably 2 or 3 months ago, how badly they treated her because she was staying at a hotel with her boyfriend who she was unmarried to. They didn't even know her. And they were insulting her for staying with him. Oh my gosh, that's bad. And she was like, I don't even like these people already. And now they're doing this. They didn't even know her. She was my friend to support me. And they were giving her a hard time. And she's like, Chanel, this is not, I don't feel good about this. Don't do this. I've had so many people trying to say, Chanel, no. That my friends, not the members of the church. Members of the church were saying I wasn't spiritual enough, that they don't understand why 2 Black people can't make it, why 2 Black Mormons can't do well. It's me. It's not him, it's me. And he's a priesthood holder. They didn't know that. Did they ask? Did they ask about his recommend? Did they ask about his membership? Nope. They assumed. I was so good for him, but not for their sons, not for their brothers, not for their friends. Just great for this man.
And great as a spokesperson for the church, that the church loves Black people. Right?
You see this Black couple? There you go. See? We do have Black members in the church.
As we kind of wind up this first part, as I'm reflecting upon your story, I can't help but think about the enormous power the church ended up having over your life, because you're raised by a family that probably isn't perfect, but none are. And, by all accounts, you felt loved in your family.
Oh, yeah.
And you loved your culture. And yet all that was going on, and I was going to also mention this, 18 is such a vulnerable age, because developmentally, you're almost supposed to differentiate. You're supposed to kind of rebel against your family because you're flying from the nest, right? You're flying from the coop, so you're going to rebel. It's such a vulnerable time where the white missionaries show up. They project affluence, they project money and love and power and unity. You're at a time where you're going to be trying to differentiate from your parents anyway. You had a near-death experience in a way.
Oh, yeah.
You have questions, and they swoop in just at that right time. And it's like they took over your life. They took over your identity. And you went on to pay for a mission, sacrifice all that time, move to Utah, do your best to integrate into the culture. All along the way, they're telling you you're less than, you're less than, you're less than. They're showing you you're less than, you're less than, you're less than. They're literally discriminating against you, excluding you, making you feel, and you're coming back, and you're coming back for more, and you're trying harder, and you're saying, it must be me. Let me try harder, to the point where you're marrying a man you're not even really attracted to, but it's because you feel like that's what this white culture around you wants you to do. And then you arrive at the place where you don't even feel like you know who you are anymore. That's an incredible amount of power. It starts out with good intentions, with sonic slushies or whatever they were.
Ocean water.
Right? Like kindness and love bombing and sonic ocean water beverages. But it ends up 10, 15 years later with you being isolated from your family, isolated from your culture, and I hate to say it, isolated from yourself, married to a man that you never would have ever wanted to be married to. Is that what happened? Am I reading that right?
That is exactly what happened. I let them change everything about me because I believed what they said when they said, God wants more from you. When they said, you are cursed, you weren't valiant, you did these things. But the but is what got me. I was like really offended and mad when she first said that. But then when her face, when she said, but you can fix it because now you're a member. Celebrate. Now we can do this. Now all you have to do is read your scriptures, endure to the end, serving your colleagues, go on a mission, and you are great. And I was like, that's all I have to do to get this curse off me? Done. That's easy. I can do that. I want to do that. But still, it's like this. It's like when my kids do this to each other. Hey, go tell him to go dance. And then the whole room is laughing at him because he's not doing this dance correctly. And they're like, did you see? He's thinking he's doing great. They're like, yeah, do your dance. And he's dancing. And the whole time they're like, that's how it felt to really find out that they're all cheering me on when they don't hope anything from me except for their amusement. Get out. Me and another friend always referred to that. That's what it's like. If you guys want to understand, watch Get Out, because that is how it is. Yeah. And it's so weird. It's like that when she's stirring that and then sends him into that place. I let them. They had so much power and control over me. I let them.
That reminds me to Get Out, and this is talked about extensively in the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson.
Yes. I've read it.
She speaks to that as well, don't you think?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Yeah. So if you have any interest in, learning more, that's a great resource for sure.
Well, I'm so sorry. Like, I feel responsible. Like, this is my people, and I feel like we did this to you. Even though I'm not in the church anymore, I still feel partly responsible for what happened.
It's so weird because 20 things could be true at once. And part of it, the members that are to blame are the ones that didn't want to hear or learn to be better. But who's to blame is the people that taught it to them and made them also feel fearful that if they didn't follow that, they couldn't get to the celestial kingdom. That's a lot of power over people.
Yeah. Yeah, the church has way too much power. Religion can have way too much power on people, over people. Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good place to end part one. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to talk about in your Mormon experience prior to kind of when you started, the crack started to really form for you?
I think the thing that leads into everything else is me always like so strong and trying to do and them saying, sit your ass back down. And me saying, well, no, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to sit down because this is what you need to listen to. I'm your priesthood holder. Or the most sinister thing about this whole thing wasn't the men, because that's patriarchy, misogyny, sure. The most sinister thing about this is that I'm 18 and everybody that's telling me what to do and molding me are all older white women telling me, how dare you? You're not virtuous. You're too wild. You're too this. And when I don't listen, then the love is withdrawn. I only love you if you listen to me and you do what I say. I have so many texts for them saying, do what I say. You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. I know better than you. I'm married. I've only been married once. I have children. I have a house. You have nothing. And I am better than you. This is a text from a friend. I am better than you because I live the gospel better than you. And because my life reflects what I do. She's mean as hell, but she's better than me because she has children that are living a great life and a good husband and a good house and good money and this, and I suck. That's not just her. These are all these women I thought were my friends are all now saying this to me.
Wow. Yeah.
That's all I want to say. That's more sinister than the men because these are the ones I trusted intimately.
I totally see that. Yep.
Well, we'll leave that as kind of the cliffhanger for part 2 because we'll come back. Yeah. And in part 2, we'll talk about, the marriage you just told us about lasted how long?
See, that's what I'm saying. I think it was 2 years.
A couple years.
I don't even remember what day. This was a mess. It was a blur. We're friends now, but.
And you had a few kids with him?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. Those are your first kids?
Yep. They're like 15 months apart and they are so much fun. And great kids. Okay. Amazing kids.
Okay. So, Chanel Achenbach, thank you so much for part 1 of your story. Yeah. I'm feeling very heavy things, but also so much gratitude because it's not your job to educate us. And this is a heavy thing for you to kind of be reliving probably. Yeah. But we all need to learn. Like you say, we have to learn. And this is one way we can learn, and hopefully it's a very generous way for you to help us learn.
Yeah. And hopefully we can take the baton and educate ourselves, take that and run with it and start that process. But we're so, so grateful you're here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, our pleasure. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And please don't go away. Come right back for part 2, where we hear about the unraveling of Chanel Achenbach's faith as a Black Mormon woman in Utah. So stay tuned. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Chanel.